Before we call the meeting to order, or I guess we'll call the meeting to order, then I'll go over brief rules and how we'll be running the meeting. So call the meeting to order at 7:08. As a preliminary matter, I'm John Stevens. I'm the chairman of the Community Preservation Committee. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated to be on the agenda are present and can hear. When I call your name, if you would just state aye so that we know that you are present. And Kristen Belanger.
Aye.
Sandy Brock.
Aye.
Okay. Also, just to make sure that you can hear, I think that's the important matter as well. Jim Gallagher. Is Jim not here? Joanne, have you heard from Jim?
I couldn't unmute myself.
Okay, all right. That's good.
Yeah,
Ken
I get
Holberger.
Aye.
And Justin Wood.
Aye.
And it's hard to look for you guys. Paul Scarlett.
Aye.
Rick Schultz. I don't believe he's in the hospital, so we certainly want to be thinking and praying for his recovery. John Stevens, I'm here, and Jen Thomas.
Here.
And we have Dennis Prone from the Grafton Lions Club.
I am here.
Good. And how about Jen Thomas? Jen Anderson?
I'm here.
You are?
Yep.
Oh, okay,
I figured no one wanted to look at my face yet till you want to tell me to talk.
I say your name, so you're good. Thank you. And Tim McInerney. I thought I saw Tim.
Aye.
Good. All right. Is there anyone that I did not call his or her name?
So I'm DJ Shagnon from CBA Landscape Architects.
I'm
Sounds-
sorry. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
I skipped you.
Not a problem at all.
I had your name on here and I just skipped right over it. Okay, good evening. This open meeting of the Community Preservation Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public meetings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Community Preservation Committee is convening by Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you and that please take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. The ground rules for the meeting. We are now turning to the first agenda item. Before we do so, please permit me to cover some of the ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down a line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and I state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself. I know this sounds a little redundant, but it will make things a lot easier to take the minutes, but also for me to identify you, because there are a lot of faces that aren't necessarily where I'm expecting to see them. So that will just make matters a little bit easier.
John, one thing. I think with Zoom, you can actually have a view that shows everyone that's participating in the call.
I can see that, but it's like, whatever, 12 people on the screen. So it's like, it's trying to look here, look there and there. It's a lot easier if it's all verbal and acknowledged.
We did an Apple Tree meeting just last night with it. It actually worked really well seeing it.
John, while we're paused for a minute in your speech, Becca Meekins is on.
Okay, so we're adding Becca Meekins.
Yep.
Welcome, Becca.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item for items with public comment. After members have spoken, I will afford public comment as follows. I will read first the public comments or questions received in advance of the meeting, if there are any, followed by real board or applicant responses. Then we will address any questions that are received during the meeting. Public comments during the meeting will be conducted through the chat feature. So the people that are participating remotely, there is a chat feature at the bottom, and that's how you can be included in this meeting. To be included in the meeting, you need to state your full name, your first and your last name, your full address, and also your question. If you do not follow those directions, we cannot respond to your question. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So I will call everyone's name and then you'll vote either A or nay. Okay. I think those are the preliminaries. If anybody has a question about how we're going to conduct the meeting, I would be happy to take your questions. All right. So we're going to go to, and we will be following the agenda as practicable as we can. Let's see, here we go. We're going to pass over the clerk's report. And Joanne, are we passing over the treasurer's report as well at this time?
That's up to Ken. Ken, do you want to pass over it? You might have, it's
Sure.
up to you.
You mean postpone?
Yeah, until it gets closer to the vote for the articles
Sure,
and project funding.
sure.
Okay.
Okay, and I think just because I know there are a couple of people that are here that we want to keep passing over, we will go, if it's okay, we have Dennis Perrone. If you would like to address, we're going to go down to Article 5, project submissions. And if you want to, if you have any additional information you'd like to provide for your project for the committee members.
If you'd like, I can read the letter into the record here.
Okay.
I wrote. Enclosed, please find an application supporting documents for funding for the next phase of our Dauphin Memorial Park project. We propose to repave the existing parking area and driveway leading into the park. The estimates of the costs are $140,000, and we've included that estimate with with this letter. We are pleased to report that we've spent very little of first phase monies from the CPC grant. This is due to the fact that we've received in-kind donations from Lion Peter Adams, who conducted the septic perk test, and from the town of Grafton Assistant Engineer Brian Zerko. We expect that the repaving will be done through the town engineer as well as with additional in-kind donations from Peter Adams. As you are aware, the Grafton Lions, as deeded caretakers of the park, maintain the property for public use. We estimate that more than 5,000 Grafton citizens make use of our walking trails, soccer field, and open space yearly. The property is offered free of charge for nonprofit organizations and a minimal $50 fee for profit organizations such as FC Stars and Best Soccer Clinics. Some of the examples of property use include the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts campout. Grafton Soccer Club holds weekly practices and weekend games and special tournaments. Grafton Public School groups visit to conduct nature studies and hiking trips to the Black Oak Trail. Grafton Recreation Outdoor Adventure Summer Recreation Program conducted by Fin and Feather Sports from February through September. And school reunions and private citizen functions are handled on a case-by-case basis, always granted for Grafton residents. The Grafton Lions really appreciates and thanks you for your consideration of this project so that we can maintain this property for use for our citizens in Grafton. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions that anyone might have of Dennis? Please identify yourself if you have a question.
John, this is Jim Gallagher.
Okay.
I'm wondering if again, we could get an amendment to the cover sheet and show the full project cost, which would include the other sources of the donated labor and things like that. Because again, as it's submitted, and I don't know if this matters to anyone, but as it's submitted, it shows that the entire project is $140,000, and that's what's being required, when in effect, there's been a lot of in-kind actions that were done, and I'm wondering if we have a dollar amount to associate with that, so we can show that for the total project cost. Or if that's really just superfluous, I'm fine with it too.
Okay, I think that's a good suggestion. I think we did discuss this maybe at the last meeting. Dennis, would it be possible to update the cover sheet, your application for $140,000? It won't change by this, but it's more illustrative of the total cost, more comprehensive.
Okay, so you want me to add that to the cover letter? It's actually on the document, the application itself. It says 5,000 in kind.
Okay, so it's on the grid, the spreadsheet where you show each piece of the fund, each funding source.
Yeah, exactly.
The $5,000 is shown on the sheet under other funding sources, but my question would be the other work that was done by Mr. Adams and by Mr. Cizerco and things like that. Is that that only came to $5,000? Am I understanding that right?
Well, it was that was for the first phase, the in-kind stuff that was spent under the first phase of the CPC money. That was for engineering and the perk testing for the sewer.
All right, so we could make the total project cost then $145,000, and then that would take care of the in-kind then. Is that correct?
Well, with the in-kind, that would make it a total, but I'm only looking for $140,000 from CPC.
I understand. The total project cost and the CPA funds requested are separate amounts. So if I understand you correctly, the total project cost is now $145,000, $5,000 of which is other funding sources, and CBA requests is 140,000.
That's correct.
Okay, so you don't have any problem if we just change your application to reflect that?
No, I have no problem at all. I'm just unsure where you want me to put it, so if you would be kind to do that, that would be fine.
Thanks, Dennis.
It puts it in the best light, Dennis. It shows that you've got other sources.
I need to remind you to please
Sorry.
do something so I don't have 6 talking heads going at once. Go ahead, Paul.
Dennis, I was just trying to clarify that the reason we want that is it helps to put it in a better light when we're presenting it to town. Shows that you've got other sources, that we're not the sole source of revenue for the project. And,
Right, correct. And that would be primarily fundraising sources that we use to support the property and grounds now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments about that, about the Lions Club grant? Okay. And we're going to vote on these all together at the end, correct, Joanne? When we read the warrant?
That's up to you. But I think you probably want to hear from Ken and listen to all of the projects.
Right. I mean, I want to make sure that we're on the same
Yep.
page
Mhm.
about that. So we're going to discuss all these projects first, and then at the end, we'll go over the warrant articles. We'll discuss the budget impact, and then we'll vote on each warrant article. Okay, so the next is for the,
Question. To McInerney.
okay.
You tell me when you're ready for me to ask.
Oh yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Just, they had an appropriation for the Lions Club. We spent very little of that money. What's the balance left on that appropriation, and will that go towards the 140, or is that still going to be used for something else?
It's my understanding that money will go back into CPA, and then we will re-award it to them. It's not necessarily the same dollars, but it's not like they're going to get an extra $70,000 for the project. It will just make the offset. It will be offset, so it'll be, rather than 140,000, it'll be 140,000 minus the net cost.
All right, so I don't know if Ken has that information, just relative to what that article has already spent out. So you would know it's 140, but if they only spent 40 from the first appropriation, it's really only 100. I'm just trying to get a handle on that.
Ken,
So you're saying that, what was the amount not spent in the first appropriation?
Correct.
My question is, how much was
So-
left over in the first appropriation?
Ken, they only spent, if I remember correctly, about $2,000 in that first appropriation for that software.
And it was $2,000, and it was spent out of, what was the grant?
I believe the first grant was about 45,000. Wasn't that what you asked for, Dennis?
Yes, it was. Can I just add something, Mr. Chairman?
yes.
We still have some engineering to do on the outside bathrooms. And there's still engineering for the septic system itself. So that money has to come out of that first grant. That engineering money was included in that first grant, and we haven't completed that yet.
Okay, and so how much do you expect that will cost?
I'm not absolutely sure, but it should be far less than what we have left. I mean, I would say under $10,000 for engineering for a bathroom and a septic system.
Okay, well, what happens is that the unspent money just goes back into the CPA funds. And, we can make a note of that when we can, consider future grants such as this one.
Doesn't that go back in after the 2-year allotment that we had? Didn't we have 2 years to spend that money?
You do, but you can only spend it on the items for which it was granted.
Correct. And we're still working on trying to get engineering on outside bathrooms.
Okay, you can take the remainder of the 2 years to do that for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, did that answer your question, Tim?
That's fine. I just want to make sure that people are clear that the money they've already spent, they've been very judicious with, and they're turning money back, even though we don't know what that number is and when that'll come back, but there will be some funds coming back. So it won't be a total 140 hit in addition to what we already given. I just wanted to
I-
make,
So it'll be
And I think-
140 and we'll get 10 or $20,000 back in from the other grant.
correct.
We'll make sure at town meeting that Dennis or whoever will speak can have those exact figures so that people will understand, even though the initial grant was for $45,000, only a certain amount was spent. So that they will have that information.
It certainly speaks in favor.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, Dennis, I think that's it. We appreciate you coming tonight.
We saved it.
You're more than welcome to stay to hear the voting, but Joanne, did you want to say
I
something?
just wanted, there's no questions. There have been no questions written in.
If
Okay,
you want me to stay, I can stay if you'd like.
it's.
I'll stick around for a while. If I get real bored and fall asleep, just kind of wake me.
Okay, well, we'll see.
All right, so if my head goes down on the keyboard like this, just kind of,
We'll wake
All
you up. Okay, thank you. Okay, now DJ is going to speak on Super Park. DJ, you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Took me a moment to find it. Sure, I believe I'm happy to speak to it some. I think, Tim, you were looking to start the discussion on this?
Yeah, Mr. Stevens, Mr. Chair, if I could just have 2 minutes of your time.
Certainly.
All right. So we do have DJ here to provide some technical support relative to the layout and the sequencing. And then we have Jen Anderson to talk about kind of the vision overall for recreation, the need for Super Park, and the timing of other grants that would be available in fundraising. But I thought I would start off with just some general history and reminding the people on the call and then anybody who watches it after kind of the history and the big picture relative to timing. First, we are, in a very odd state of affairs, and we're trying to keep services up and running across the state of Massachusetts and across the country, given the coronavirus. So that's been the mainstay, and I think a lot of people would say, well, we're still keeping operations up, and you guys are still having meetings and being good stewards of the money that CPA raises and that was voted on by the community. So it's just, I think I have to acknowledge the fact that there's a lot of things going on to keep the infrastructure going and allowing this meeting to take place, and a lot of credit needs to go to Joanne and to Becca to keep this infrastructure up and running so we can keep government moving forward. So I want to publicly acknowledge their efforts, and even all of your efforts is to take the time out just to, in anticipation of a town meeting, when and if that happens. Certainly it will happen. It's an interesting time and tough for a lot of people, but the fact that we can continue to plan on a project given this circumstance, I think speaks volumes of capacity and our bandwidth to get things done. So having said that, I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you to the people who are working hard behind the scenes, and for you folks who are on the committee that are stewards of not only the money, but really a stakeholder in the development of recreation in the community, because that's part of the charge of the CPA funds. And I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but it's important that whatever we talk about here is a combined effort from staff, Recreation Commission, and the CPC, and previous boards and committees in town meeting as well. But this is kind of the culmination. So having said that, DJ is going to talk about the layout of the land, if you will, behind the library. And I'm going to talk in general terms relative to the number. And we know that there's some restrictions in terms of the amount of money that we can put towards a project. But I think it's important that the community know that CPA, as it was voted, that money relative to the project gets raised either way. If there are other projects that are better, given the timing and circumstances that we're in right now, we are completely amenable to change course if necessary. But this is the project that we've been tasked with from first the committee of the Board of Selectmen, with 2 appropriations from town meeting, one of which was from the CPA that had a sunset clause on it, because we just couldn't, I think at that time we were confused on the site that we were looking for. But in terms of community support and funding for the project, town meeting, select board, and CPA has supported the project in its iterative phases to get us to where we are. And so timing is everything, and timing right now, given the climate and the environment and the economy, it's never good to talk about spending money and or raising money. But having said that, planning for the future is kind of what we have to do. And just a side note relative to the Lions Club, that's just like a most recent example of the partnership with CPA that we've undertaken that has been a success story to minimize the cost and the use of CPA funds by providing in-kind services, because we have capacity to do that. But the committee has to recognize some of the places where the community as a whole has fallen down using the money from CPA. So some of these are sore subjects, and I'm just trying to avoid these subjects from reoccurring. So the library lift, we use CPA money to do that lift. That lift is no longer there anymore. We had to do it, but we knew we were going to do something else in the future. The library site itself in the 1980s had an oil tank that leaked for we don't know how long, petroleum fuel into the soil. The community at the time in the 80s was a difficult time. They made difficult decisions, I'm sure, but they left that leaking oil there for us to deal with today, which has added $800,000 to the cost. So in terms of us trying to foresee the future and deal with those things proactively, those are 2 examples where we just kind of missed the mark a little bit. The fire escapes at One Grafton Common, Paul will tell you the work we did on getting them restored and then removing them and then putting on the elevator, which was the right thing to do, and we did it only when the resources became available from the high school project. So those are just some missed things. Other positive things are Airport Park. We partnered with CPA, and I don't know, I'm going to make up a number, saved at least 50% on the appropriation that was asked by Little League when we ran the pipe to drain that field ourselves. So we now have a coordinated effort to make sure that projects that are community related, if we have resources, we're going to bring the shoulder to bear to move that project along. So in terms of that partnership, those are just very clear illustrative examples of how we've done great things with in-house opportunities or resources and leveraging it for the best fit. But I also make mention of 2 shortcomings, if you will, relative to the fire escapes and the library lift. And probably more pointedly is the oil tank that now has leaked significantly onto that site, which we're now paying for to clean up. So, you know, missed an opportunity in the 80s to probably clean up something that would have been much more expeditious. So my point in all this is I don't want to miss an opportunity to get the full use of that land that we purchased from the Peralts for the intention of the library use, but always wanting to extend the back parcel for some other use. And that use right now on the table is Super Park. So this project that DJ will get into does have an estimated cost, and it's estimated because we had community meetings, we talked to people, we had a lot of mapping and survey work to see what people wanted to see. The estimated cost is 2.6 million for the whole thing. We don't think we're going to do the whole thing in one shot. We don't think it's realistic. So we want to have a pared down scope and a phased approach to getting this done. But I think it's important to think about this as a 3-step process that doesn't interfere with the library project, which we know we've satisfied that requirement. Getting the utilities to the back end of the property for infrastructure purposes to build this project, I think is critical no matter what. So we think phase 1, and I'll have the details given by DJ, can be done for right around $1 million. We don't have any near $1 million in cash on hand. We have money left from the overlay account that was given at town meeting probably 2 years ago now for 300,000. And then there's probably cash on hand for CPA for recreational purposes. And obviously the delta would have to be about a $700,000 10-year bond that we would have to issue to get the full $1 billion to do phase one. So that's really kind of in a nutshell, but coordinating those utilities at a minimum, no matter what we do, if we have to do it with the money we have now from the overlay, we kind of have to move that forward, because in 5 years, if this gets mothballed, we're going to kick ourselves just like we did with the oil tank of not dealing with it now. So I just want to kind of bring those things to the surface and have a more fruitful discussion about thinking about how to leverage what the work we're doing on that site now to be better for all of us and cheaper for us in the long run. So DJ, can you walk us through the phase one? And you had it, I don't know if you can share your screen to show those plans. I think you have that ability.
Yeah, I'm
That lays out.
comfortable doing so as long as that's okay. I know there was a comment about screen sharing and things. I can share just that window if people are concerned about seeing my otherwise rather clean desktop anyway. But
Mr. Chair,
Certainly fine, because
okay,
we don't have the ability to hand out documents, so this way everybody gets to see what you're talking
sure.
about.
Mr.
So,
Chair, I'm sorry,
I have a
I'm sorry,
question.
DJ, 1 second.
Sure.
Yes,
Justin,
I just want a clarification. The only two people I've seen at CPC talking about this have been Jen Thomas and Tim McInerney now. I'm actually curious who and what people are actually advocating and asking for the super park, because I have not heard, I've heard people say it's the Recreation Commission. I have not heard any of them advocate for it. And I just spent a few minutes listening to Tim, and I was expecting to have the presentation driven by the Rec Commission today. So I'm just confused, and I want just that clarity, please.
John, you want to answer it? I mean, Jen works for the town and she works for the Recreation Commission in terms of setting policy, and she can talk to where they're at. But I would just remind us all that we've had 2 appropriations again from town meeting of CPA money and overlay money. So in terms of community support, I recognize it as being a need and a want in the community. If there needs to be more, I can't give those people to you over the web.
Jen Thomas, can I say something?
yes.
Hi, just to clarify, the project I explained last time has now shifted. There is no longer a super park committee, and the Recreation Commission has taken this project on. So the application is from the Recreation Commission. So it is not, I have spoken about it because I still know what's happening, but I am not, this is a Recreation Commission project. It is not my project.
Okay, maybe I misspoke. I meant to say Jen Anderson if I didn't earlier. Jen Anderson, would you like to give us a little bit of information about the project, and then we'll let DJ get into the information you can talk about.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This is Jim Gallagher. I'm wondering if it's possible, before we start talking about the essence of the article, if we could fill in what the project cost and the CPA request is going to be on that, so that we can be thinking about that as they're presenting what's going to be done. You know what I mean?
Okay, is that something, Jen, that you can address? Jen
I
Anderson.
can. Jen
Okay,
Anderson.
So we'll try to get back to Jen Anderson. We keep getting sidetracked. So
No
Jen
problem.
Anderson is going to discuss briefly the project and the costs associated with phase 1.
Well, that's why I think this is a multi-person approach. You know, like Jen Thomas said, the committee, Super Park Committee disbanded. You know, this project was going to be coming under our umbrella recreation-wise at some point. So it just made sense that we got involved and taken over. So because it's become a staff and recreation staff and commission-driven project, we've been part of it. but Tim and Jen Thomas and the people who were part of it from the beginning have still obviously had a huge part of this because of their background of knowledge for it. So we looked at tonight as a, you know, like I said, a multi-person approach with Tim would be able to discuss these sorts of items. I could expound upon other things and other, you know, the timing and why we need a new playground and the maintenance questions people might have. And then DJ's here to really talk more specifically in detail about that cost estimate. So, you know, I don't know if that spreadsheet has been shared with you with the whole breakdown of the entire cost estimate of the 2.6, which really would include everything that's kind of ever been thought of between a dog park and outdoor fitness and a multi-sport court and lighted pathways, which, you know, might not necessarily, as we go through that final phase of the public outreach, be of interest. And so those are itemized so we can look at those and say, okay, maybe we don't want this. I think we do know the minimum of what we're looking for in phase one, and what that million, just over $1 million number is, and a couple of ways to approach that. So DJ, if you think this is a good time for you to pipe in about that, I would defer to you right now, I think.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, can I-
DJ, if you want to take it over, and if as you discuss each piece, like she mentioned, the various components, if you could provide a number that goes with each one of those, and then we can discuss when you're finished the pieces that look like they're going to be phase one, and then how.
I can do that. Let me rearrange my screens a little so that I'll be able to look at the cost estimate while we go through. Okay, I am ready if folks are. So to give a bit of background on where we are and where we got to this point, I know some of the faces here were at the community meeting that was held on March 4th, where we presented sort of the background and strategy, as well as the results of the online survey that we did for public outreach. And presented a bit of the project history, but also tried to emphasize that this first stage is really looking at the overall grand vision and the master plan, so that whatever the town chooses to move forward with as the initial bit of construction, we know what the future needs are, at least conceptually, to be able to not paint ourselves into a corner and say, oh wait, we wanted to put in a lighted path, but we ran the path back there without running electricity or something of the sort. So the goal is really to understand the big picture and then drill down to what we want to put into phase one, or what the town wants to put into phase one. So with that in mind, we created sort of one possibility for the arrangement of the parts that people have been requesting, which is what got shared with you in a slightly earlier form. It's only changed in that I had time to render it up, so it's a little easier to understand visually when you can't look closer at the plan yourself. What we are looking at this point is...
I don't see a share, DJ.
Nope, I'm about to do that. I just got to find the right share here. What we are looking at overall is an overall master plan like this. And if you can see the hand moving, so this is the library project as it's currently designed up here. And then the one possible arrangement for the overall vision, people had expressed an interest in shade pavilion and restroom structures, in a playground, specifically a fairly large playground reminiscent of the old super park in some ways, but a modern accessible structure with real inclusive play. Desire for a splash pad and for some open lawn for recreation. And then some other things that had gotten talked about were a walking path, nature trails, a multi-sport court, the possibility of a dog park, and things like that in the mix. So one of the things that came out of that meeting was the idea of, and I'm going to zoom in a bit on the key area here, using the sort of parking area to help separate the active uses from the railroad tracks a little bit to try to offset that. So the general organization would build a new area of parking dedicated to the super park off of the library parking, as well as bringing in utility stubs and building a connecting path from the library, where the library's path ends, down to the park complex. And the total for that ends up being about $272,000 between all of the construction and running utility stubs back to here, which we sort of see in between the parking area and the future picnic shelter as kind of the most obvious spot in this arrangement for a utility hub that then can branch out to the various areas of the park as needed during construction. We've separated the playground area into 2 phases. You can see the first phase play equipment in the blue and the second phase in the orange over here. Basically with the intent that the full wish list and the scale of playground that had been discussed in past iterations of the Super Park project on this site start to get pretty sizable. And so breaking that into phases and a phased approach even to the playground itself has always been talked about, as far as I know, for this site from the earliest drafts of things. And I think that that's very much the right way to go. There's also the possibility of working in this open lawn. I'll come back to the playground in terms of costs in a moment, because it sort of depends how it breaks down and what you include. Actually, I might as well go to that now. Looking at the playground phase 1 as we designed it, and let me see if I'm able to switch which screen I am sharing. To see about if I switch plans to this black and white one. Are folks seeing that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. So this is an enlargement of the play area in a black line drawing, but it gives a better sense for what the phase 1 play equipment and phase 2 are. We've got a younger children's structure, 2 to 5-year-olds rather, in this corner, a 5 to 12 structure that has a first and second part, some independent play features, an inclusive sensory wall, outdoor musical instruments possibly, swings, seesaw, an accessible spinner, some net-based play in the phase 2, and a zip line. So building out phase 1 of this, which would be all of the fencing around the entire perimeter, all of the path system through the space, and the phase 1 equipment, the stuff in black, and the rubber surfacing or whatever safety surfacing is needed for underneath those, whether we go with port-in-place rubber or something else.
I actually only see the color version still.
Oh, okay. We only see the color version.
Yeah,
okay.
I got a message as well that someone else was only seeing the color, but that's on the call.
Okay, thank you. I had thought it had swapped over. I'm going to stop the share and do a new share so that when
I'm colorblind, so I'm sorry. I just accepted it. That's what she said.
That's okay.
There we go.
So now are we seeing the black and white one?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank
May I
you.
interrupt
Thank
for a
you, Chrissy,
minute?
for pointing that out.
BJ, I'm sorry. Can I just interrupt about a meeting protocol thing?
Please.
Folks who are on the call, you can send a message to me via the chat function. So if at some point you're not seeing something, you can reach out to me that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so back to what I was saying was that if we're looking at the black and white plan, you've got a younger children's play structure in this area. You're seeing the little hand moving, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. An older children's play structure in this area, accessible spinner, seesaw, bay of swings that can be built in 2 parts, and a zip line structure. The splash pad is in its own phase outside of the playground stuff, or it's broken into its own element in the cost estimate. But to build out the playground, the pathways through it, the tree plantings, the concrete plazas in the key areas, and the play equipment shown in black and appropriate safety surfacing for that comes out to about $650,000. So our running total at that point would be 924. Starts to add up fast. Some of that is that we are being conservative in terms of safety surfacing and assuming that we want to do all of it with the port-in-place rubber. And I'm being conservative in the pricing because until we've got a play equipment design and so forth, we don't really know quite where the cost efficiencies can get brought back. So hopefully, like the Lions Club, although not to the same scale, we'll be able to bring the costs down as it moves on. But to give a sense for what phase 1 versus phase 2 would look like, these are renderings that were done for us by one potential vendor, and we'll continue to explore, who we're proposing equipment from, and there's a public bid process anyway. So we'll make sure we're getting the town the most competitive pricing. But this is the phase 1 structures for the younger children and the older children, which is mostly ramp-based, but has a sort of interesting play tower at one end. They showed all the swings in phase 1. I think they missed a memo. A few different views and angles of that phase 1 stuff. And then when it expands out to phase 2, we add on this net-based play, the spinner, the seesaw, the zip lines, and so forth, to get sort of a more complete picture of what the super park eventually will once again be super. Well, I'll move on to the next one. So the idea of the pavilion and shade structure, as well as the restroom area, this is a very similar model. I think we'd rearrange something because there hasn't been much call for concessions here. But the idea being a structure sort of like, if folks are familiar with Great Brook Farm State Park, that has a shade structure with an attached bathroom. That's a very successful model. And one of the nice features about it is that there's the option of building just the 3 bays that are open first and the bathroom later, or vice versa, to enable us to sort of approach that shade structure through whatever organization of features makes sense for it. Back to that plan. The shade area back here, at least in this version, fits about 4 picnic tables under it. And to build just the shade structure and the picnic tables and so forth would be on the order of 90 to 100,000, which would then, if we did that together with the playground phase 1 and the parking, puts us at just around the million that, just over the million that Tim was talking about as sort of a rough target. Another option would be to build out the loop path and the open lawn area without the outdoor fitness and so forth, and without the lighting on it, but to put in the pieces so that those were feasible to come back and do later, which is also the loop path itself is about 100,000 for all that. Some of the cost is that this is all wooded back here. So we'd need to do a whole lot of tree clearing, brush removal, and so forth. And it just starts to add up when you're talking about nearly an acre of space just for the lawn itself. But then that leaves the potential open to do the nature trails and boardwalks or whatever else in future configurations. And if there's interest to come back and do the multi-sport court or the dog park or one or the other or both, depending on where the master plan process shakes out. I really do want to emphasize again also that this is just one possible arrangement of the parts, and assuming that it were to move forward, I don't expect that this will look exactly like the final design. I think we're really looking at something where we see the overall picture in this and tried to do one of the more conservative cost-wise versions, as in it'll be, you know, the 2.6 total that Tim mentioned is on the high end of what the costs could be. But to continue, you know, after we've gotten the loop path, lighting the loop path is about another $120,000, $125,000. Adding the splash pad into the play area comes to about $70,000 between the concrete work, the splash pad, the associated drainage, and so forth. Building out the phase 2 of the playground, taking the areas that weren't rubber surface before that we would have filled either with wood chips or with lawn areas or something of the sort, and replacing those with play equipment and play structures, looks like it's about another $450,000 based on the current design. The back half, the restroom structure of the pavilion, is on the order of $150,000. The outdoor fitness area is probably about $70,000 based on a similar project that we had done. And on most of these, because we haven't done detailed design work yet, we've just sort of done overall master planning efforts. I'm basing this on past projects that CBA has put together that were comparable in size and scope. And then the dog park, the multi-sport court, around $225,000 if we were to go with a design like that one. The dog park, again, based on a similar project, about $225,000. And then to build out the nature trails and the boardwalks, the nature trails themselves would be about, looks like about $90,000. And the boardwalks get expensive fast to build respectfully and sensitively in the wetland areas, and could add as much as $100,000 to $115,000 based on the current layout of things. But all of that is subject to figuring out what it is during the master planning process with the community as a whole. So that's the quick overview. And I'm happy to answer any questions folks have. My experience with CPA projects, funded projects in the past, includes the fact that I think there are limitations on how you're able to spend open space money, whether it can go to parking or not, or that may not be true in your case. It may be governed by governing bylaws. But in any case, we've worked through CPA funded projects before and all of the requirements that go with that. I'm very comfortable doing so. I'd also be happy to work with the town on applying for state grant funding now that the open space and rec plan is finished or getting close to finished based on what I understand from Jen Anderson. But I think it'd be ready in time for the grant funding cycle, which could also help to lower the costs to the town. So please, I'm open to questions. If anyone needs clarification on anything, happy to answer.
John,
Yes.
John, somebody has sent in a question, one of the
Okay.
attendees.
If you'd like to read it.
Certainly, it's from Nick Talcott of 57 Waterville Street. The question is, why is a super park being discussed while the town is trying to pass an override to keep schools at a bare minimum funding level? Is this money being taken from funds that were already raised or assigned to this project?
CPC funds are separate from whether it's operating expense or capital needs of the town, that we have this money, the override, this cannot be used to offset an override, that CPC is strictly for this type of project, for open space, historic preservation, and affordable housing. So we have these funds are available, and that's the purpose of Grafton participating in the Community Preservation Act, is to make available these types of funds so our town can have quality of life assets that we would not otherwise have the money to do in times especially like this. I don't know if, was there another question or just that one?
Just that one.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for DJ, or two actually.
Justin?
Yep.
Go
I
ahead.
just want to preface this by the fact that I get slightly distracted by my kids right near the end of the presentation, but so if it was addressed, I apologize. I would love it just to restate for myself. The boardwalk that goes through Rutland's on the plan that we received, as well as the multi-sport court areas and the off-leash dog area, I did not hear those discussed or any dollar figures put for those pieces.
Okay, yes, so the multi-sport court area comes to about 225,000. The dog park is also right about 225,000. And the nature trails look like they are about 100,000. And then the boardwalk area is another 100 on its own, give or take. Does that answer the question?
That answers the part I believe I needed you for, yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Jen Thomas?
Sorry, people keep moving. I don't know why that is. Jen, go ahead. Thomas.
I just wanted to clarify that those are items, the multi-sport court, the dog park, the nature trail, the boardwalk, that are not currently being, those are things that could happen in the future, but they may or may not. This is still conceptual. These aren't like engineered plans. So those are just ideas. And the whole point of having our consultant is to kind of determine what the town wants and what the town is willing to spend money on. So at this point.
Yeah, I see Jen just dropped. I don't know if she meant to, okay. But my main point for mentioning it is the only plan I received in my email, so the only plan I had a good chance to actually review ahead of this meeting was the one black and white that I received, I think it was yesterday or the day before. And that did, the only wording on there did say phase 1 in black, phase 2 in orange, and the courts and the boardwalk and all that was in black. So that's why it was, an important commentary for me to be aware of.
I apologize. I think that the note on that said, or at least was intended to say, that within the playground, the phase 1 was in black and the phase 2 was in orange, but I apologize for any unclarity on that on my part. No, the intent of the current proposed phase 1, as I've been discussing it with Jen and with Tim, has been, Jen Anderson that is, and Tim, has been to look at the necessary utilities infrastructure for the whole project under the library parking, and then parking for the super park, a phase 1 of the playground, and some other feature based on sort of the needs assessment, which could be that open lawn path, or it could be a shade pavilion, it could be a splash pad. I think any of those are reasonable phase 1 possibilities. And open to exploring which of those make the most sense. Everything beyond that point, essentially everything further in than the open lawn with loop path that shows on both the plan you received and the colored one I had up earlier, is definitely phase 2 and very much just conceptual at this point. But based on the responses that we received to what the public was interested in potentially seeing in a super park.
Hey, this is Ken Holberger. Could you talk about the timing of the phases, how it might come to pass?
Sure. To the best I understand it, and Tim or anyone else who knows the library project better than I do, feel free to chime in. The library is under construction at the moment. The most pressing need is to figure out what we need to run under that parking area for utilities, and whether there are any tweaks that would really help our project for them to make in the construction of their parking lot. for instance, I've already had a conversation with Andy that the library's planned retention basin, as their engineers currently have it laid out, more or less would have to cut off some of the pathway connection. It would be right where you'd want to put it. So we could work over it with a boardwalk or something like that, but it seems like an impractical way to do it rather than saying, hey, can you shift your retention basin a little? So that is really the most pressing item, is getting that infrastructure in place. Phase one with a parking extension, playground phase one, and let's hypothetically say the shade structure and some of the open lawn area, throwing it out there. My understanding is that the goal would be to, if it moves forward, if it's approved both by CPC and at town meeting, to enter into design for it and be prepared to break ground. Are we thinking theoretically next spring or summer? Or if we go after a state grant, I guess it would be breaking ground in July 1, when the next grant fund, not this July 1, but July 1 of 2021, when that state grant will become available based on their funding cycle. We've done a lot of projects that have been grant funded over the years, and that seems to work pretty well. So that would give us, you know, the summer and into the fall to do detailed design, put it out to bid when the bidding climate is at its most competitive, and then start construction in the spring, or if the grant requirements require it, into the summer of next year. And then
you speak of the grants, what are the amounts that you might get from the grantee, the grantor?
It varies by town. I'm not familiar, so I'm going to defer to Jen Anderson on that one.
Yeah, and I think, Tim, if I'm correct, the latest that Andy Deshane has given us now for timing is that the parking lot is prepared to go in the library in the fall. So we'd really want to be lining up with that prior to that. I think it was like the final layer of the spring, but the fact when everything would be initially laid down would be the fall. So that's where that timing comes into play.
So that would correspond to the $273,000 part?
Yes, and to be completely clear on that, the $273,000 is both the utilities and the connections we need to make to the library and the physical parking lot for the super park. I think obviously we wouldn't need to build the physical parking lot for the super park quite that early in the process.
But I mean, Ken, grants wise, there is the park grant through the state. We are considered a small town under that. So the small town grants are up to $100,000. That is what it is, July cycle for that. So there's that opportunity amongst quite a few others that are more specific to playgrounds, ADA playgrounds, dog parks, if we get to the dog park. So we are looking into those more specific fundraising opportunities, but we know that the one that's coming up the soonest, and that would be the largest, would be the park grant in July.
So that one you're speaking of is, you said $100,000?
Yes.
Jen, this is John. What kind of matching, if any, is required by at least the $100,000 grant?
Yeah, all of these, like most, would be reimbursement grants. So we need to have the town, showing that the town is covering that cost to begin with, and then be, that we have the backed funding for the whole project, and then be reimbursed for that.
And the park grant, at the very least, is a matching grant. Again, the ratio varies by town, and I don't know what Grafton's is, but it's usually, it would be along the lines of $100,000 up to 60% of the project costs, throwing in a percentage.
Yeah, I think it's 50
we're over that.
to 70%.
Yeah.
John, I have a question.
Yes, Jim?
I want to go back to my original question. The article that we're going to be voting on later on this evening, are we looking at a bond for the entire 2 million? Are we looking for a request for phase one? Or what is it that we're actually going to be voting on later tonight?
Jen? Jen
I
Manderson.
Yeah, I actually don't know if that's a fully me question, but, you know, we obviously would like to look at this whole project and at once. That's why we're doing this, to see what everything we could possibly put into that space. And we think everyone wants what that cost would be. But we're prepared to, that's why we've broken out into these chunks. So preparing to look at the phase one at more of that 1.1 million mark, and what is a small bite for you guys to, you know, that's more attainable for you, and to see what we can do with the money that we're funded.
So I'm gonna, John, if I may,
Yes.
so just to take it a step further, if you wanted specifics, I would say to you that for this project to be successful for phase one, we have to kind of look at it in totality of what we think we want there over a period of time, not just one and done. So the request is certainly not to have you borrow 2.6 for 10 or 15 or 20 years. But there has to be, if we're going to do phase one, and we know that's in the $1 million ballpark, we know what funds you might have available in terms of cash on hand for recreation purposes. We know what the overlay account has left in it. I think it's 240, give or take. So I would say the ask would be for cash on hand of about 200 to 250, depending on what's on hand, and then an allocation for a 10-year bond payment of 85.2 at a 4% interest rate for 10 years would give us 700,000. So the 85.2 would cover that debt service. So we would be asking for you to bond and using the annual proceeds you get from the tax bills to pay debt service of 85.2, excuse me.
Thank you, but it's one of these things that we really need to know what we're voting on. So it's like your request. So I don't think that we're going to fill in that amount. So are we looking at 1.1? Are we looking at 250,000 on this particular warrant article, or are we bonding more? I'm a little confused.
I think you're bonding 700,000. And I think if you have 250 in cash, that's what our request would be for.
You said 250, 250K?
250,000, that's correct. To get us
All
through,
right, that's I just needed to put a number in that block. So we're looking at this is a request for 250,000 on the CPA funds requested. Is that correct?
No.
and 700,000 to be borrowed.
We would bond 700,000. They would bring to the table 200 to 240, and then we would have to have whatever balance in cash, which we would have available to make up the difference. So it would have three different funding pieces.
So
Correct.
if I'm reading this correctly, just to completely clarify, this is specifically for utilities, parking, for the playground phase one, and to do the pavilion and shed. Is that correct?
No.
That would be one in.
Yeah, just to-
Go ahead. Oh,
What
sorry.
I'm
I was
understanding
going to
is
say,
272,000 for the sidewalks, utilities, and parking, and 651,000 for the playground phase one, which includes the fencing, paths, the surfaces, the playground equipment, and trees.
yes, and utilities to make the future splash pad possible, and, park furnishings like benches in there, but yes.
John, can I interject for a second?
Yes.
We have a question from a member of the community.
Yeah, Paul, I've been waiting to try to jump in. I have a couple in the Q&A area and then one that's on the chat session, John. There's 4 questions from people who are watching online.
Okay, so if you want to read the
just-
first question.
Yeah, Paul, I jumped ahead of you because I want to make sure I've got some Q&A and I'm not certain you guys can see those. I think you can see the chat sessions. But Colleen Roy, 53 Elmwood Street, asked previously, CPC stated that they wouldn't have much funding available to put towards this project. Now that the project cost has ballooned to this incredibly high figure of 2.6 million, is this a project CPC can fund?
I'm not sure when we said we wouldn't have much funding available to put toward this project or the amount that was. We're not looking to spend $2.6 million at this town meeting. What is being asked is for, I believe, $1.1 million for a phase one. I don't know if I need to ask Ken or if I need to ask Jen. Ken,
Yeah, I'm not sure. The numbers that I'm hearing don't seem to all add up to the same thing. I heard a proposal that we do a $700,000 10-year bond plus $250K of cash. So that adds up to 950, not 1.1 million.
they
There's
have
10.
about 240,000 in funds that have already been approved by town meeting. I believe it's
That would make up the rest of it. So the ask is not of the CPA is not 1.1 million. It's 250K plus a bond. And to answer the caller's questions, no, the CPA doesn't have that much money by a factor of 2 or
I've
more.
got-
So
I still think it's not clear the way that the project is going to be funded. It's $700,000 bond.
that's the
200
proposal.
200, thank you, 200 to 240,000 that's already on hand. And then whatever the difference is to get us to $1.1 million from funds from open space or recreation, if they're available, restricted funds, or funds for any purpose or budget.
John, you cut out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm not sure what part where I cut out.
I heard him.
You heard him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Probably just on my end. Okay.
Finished.
John, I do have more questions if you've answered.
I want to get the budget piece answered so that everybody understands and is on the same page. Either Jen, Tim, or Ken.
So I'll take another crack at it, Mr. Chair. This is Tim. So the ask for was the 700 for the bonding, and then 250 provided we have that on hand. To get us to my math was 1,050,000. If it's 1.1 with the 240 we have on hand, that the number we have on hand is irrelevant. We want to get to the 1,050,000 or 1.1 million is what we want to get to. So it'd be 700,000 bonding capacity from CPC plus 250,000 of cash on hand for a total of 950. Is that clear?
That yes.
Okay, this is Ken Holberger. For me, the ask numbers are starting to add up and make sense. But I have a question for Tim, is that you stated the potential for a 10-year 4% bond of $700,000 with a payment of 85.2K per year initially. On what do you base that?
An amortization schedule for a 10-year, $700,000 borrow of 4%. That's the annual payment that would be needed to cover that 700,000 at a 4% interest rate. And we know we do better than that in the market, but right now that's right this very moment.
Can I, Colleen Roy has asked a follow-up question. At our last CPC meeting, Ken Holberger stated if the ask was 500,000, then CPC doesn't have it
And that's still true. In cash.
in
Bonding.
cash.
We have bonding capacity.
John, let me know when I can go to
Agent
another.
Colleen, that we would be bonding $700,000.
That's the proposal.
Assume all of this is proposed, okay? I'm not going to keep saying it.
I've got
Joanne,
more questions.
yes.
Okay. The next one, I'm trying to take these folks in order, is from Ed Prisby, 25 Daniel Drive. What are the maintenance costs associated with the park? What is the water reclamation cost associated with a splash pad?
So Jen Anderson here. DJ, you might be able to speak more on the splash pad water usage. I mean, in general, maintenance of this park should be minimal. It is stated by the Parks Department that it should be able to, it can be absorbed within their current program. The surfacing of this playground would not require the annual labor nor the costs that our other parks currently do. And the minimal maintenance is obviously going to be highly considered in the design and layout. So, for example, it takes the crew much longer to mow and weed whack Mill Villages Park due to the large rocks and such than it does to mow Olive Airport Park. So DJ has spoken to that before in the community meeting as well regarding keeping this in mind in the design.
Yeah, to further address that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the portion about the splash pad, we are currently, to keep budget under control, assuming this as a relatively low flow splash pad, so jets that use a minimum of water if possible, and recirculating systems and recapture systems start to get incredibly expensive and maintenance heavy. They're relatively maintenance friendly in a sense, but we were not envisioning that as part of the cost structure on the splash pad. To do that would probably about double the cost of the splash pad to have a recirculation system, and it adds a whole lot more maintenance. What we instead would propose is using a low flow system that keeps the water use down to a minimum. The jets are on a timer so that when you push the button, they go for a certain number of minutes and then shut themselves off so they're not constantly running. And we'd run it all into an infiltration system so that it can at least be recharged into the groundwater to the extent possible. It was the approach that other past clients have ended up taking after analyzing both the recirculating systems and the infiltration-based flow-through systems with us. But we're certainly open to, and we can explore a recirculating system if that's what the town would like us to do.
And also to be clear that this is not part of the phase
Also
one.
correct, yes. That is not part of the proposed phase one in most of the scenarios we were asked to look at, no.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up question to the maintenance point for DJ / Jen that I've been holding on to, if I may.
Yes.
All right. On the, I know it's not part of phase one, possibly not even a phase two, but for the boardwalk, I know at a planning board meeting that I had in the last year, there was a particular developer who was looking to do a subdivision that abutted Grafton Land Trust property. They had talked about possibly doing a boardwalk for part of that where it gets muddy on the Land Trust property where there's a trail. The Robert Aberg from the Land Trust had then, in discussion with the property owner and looking into it, they ruled that out as a viable option in terms of the length that a boardwalk is usable from building to needing to be replaced and maintained better. So my question is, how long from implementation would a boardwalk be in place, and how much is the maintenance of repairing it? Is it exactly the same as what it costs to build it, or is it less? Those are kind of my related questions there.
Sure. If I may, I priced it out on the assumption that what we were looking at was actually a boardwalk built out of recycled plastic timber, which is essentially recycled milk jugs turned into timbers with additional fiberglass elements in them to make them structurally stable for it. And that ends up lasting much, much longer than an actual wood timber boardwalk would. It's also more expensive to install initially, but significantly cuts down the maintenance over the years. The one we put in, closing in on 10 years ago in the city of Boston, is still holding up incredibly well. And it was one that they had us do in that fashion because it was previously a timber boardwalk that kept falling apart on them. And they said, okay, let's just put in recycled plastic timber instead. And the structural recycled plastic timber holds up very well over time.
John,
Okay.
ready for
Yes.
another question?
Okay.
Matthew Often, 79 Old Westboro Road. How much would it cost, excuse me, how much would it cost Grafton to put in water and power infrastructure retroactively? Without detailed design, how do we know what is needed without those detailed designs?
DJ?
Sure. So to put it in retroactively, it's going to add more costs to the library because you'd need to be tearing up existing paving or running it through less direct routes. So it's going to add significant costs for that. Plus you'll end up with, digging a trench across your brand new library parking lot to do it. I don't have a figure on how much it would add to do it retroactively for you. I haven't analyzed that other than to know that construction efficiencies being what they are, if we can find a way to piggyback it onto the library project, you've already got contractors on site, the ground's already torn up and so forth. And it's a more cost efficient time to do it, but I don't have an exact figure on how much more cost efficient.
Would there be a ballpark that you could give as far as, are we looking at 500,000 instead of 250, 273? We're looking at a million.
If I had to ballpark it as a very rough estimate, we're looking at about 1,800 feet of utility lines between the three different types of utilities. Actually close to 2,000 with the drainage in there as well. 2,000 feet, 4-foot wide trenches to get down to the depths required. So we've got 8,000 square feet at $6-ish a square foot for bituminous at a vehicular grade. It's at least another 50,000 of utility costs, where the utilities right now are about 100. So it's about half again as much for the utility portion. The other related portions of that 272 are other costs.
So
I
John,
think
this is
that's what
Sandy Brock.
I think that's what Tim was addressing at the very beginning. We don't want to add on an addition to the library that we have to tear off.
Right.
That this is the time to do it. The library does not want the parking lot ripped up, but the infrastructure, if this is the time to do it, this is the most efficient time, the least disruptive. Was it Sandy that you had a question?
Yes, this is this is Sandy Brock. So I have a couple of questions around that. Absolutely, it would be less expensive to do it now, but you say you have a contractor on site doing it. Would this be a change order, or would you put it out to bid?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure what the specifics of things are.
And just as a caution, depending upon the contract and so forth, by putting in a change order, you're going to pay significantly more on that change order than if you put it out to bid at this time. I mean, to order of magnitude of 2 to 4 times.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Tim?
So just, the site is being overseen by a construction company now, so we'd have to coordinate that effort. We wouldn't have the library contract to do any of this maintenance.
Okay, you're cutting up on me.
I'm sorry?
Okay, you want to try it again? I did not hear what you said.
We would not offer a change order to the library. Completely separate. coordinate that because they control the state because they're on it. They're responsible for it. So we have to go through a very, diligent discussion with them. But it'd be a separate contract or whatever. We can dig ourselves, obviously, to do that. And it would not be anything to do with the contractor on site for the library.
Okay, so this would not be a change order was the answer to that.
Correct, yeah, and that was when you start talking costs on conceptual plans, it's just that it's conceptual. And, your plus and minus on your costs, and with the bidding cycles and with our current, situation and everything changing, the bidding is going to change too, and you may end up spending a lot less, but no one knows that, and it's very hard to predict. So, thank you.
Astoundingly hard. Cost estimates are the bane of my existence, even though we try to get them as close as we can based on past and recent projects. So all the unit pricing that we used is based on a compilation of recent work that we've done in similar scales and communities. But as Sandy says, it very much is dependent on the bidding climate when it goes out to bid, and that can vary based on everything under the sun, unfortunately. I have tried to be very conservative in these cost estimates in terms of erring on hopefully the high side. And I'm hopeful that the actual costs will be more affordable than these are. But that's part of why we envision the whole project, try to understand all of the needs so that we can really prioritize what the best way to approach things is.
Okay, is that Jim with the hand?
Um,
Jim Gallagher? Did that wake you up?
John, can I get some, I don't quite know what's happening, but some of these questions that are coming in through the Q&A, they kind of dismissed on their own. I don't know if I hit something. I've got them reopened. I'd like to go through those if I could quick.
Okay.
We have another question. It's from Jennifer Paluzzi, 19 Cortlandt Way. What is the total cost for the first phase, and will the town meeting article cover everything for that phase? I guess it's possible she dismissed this if she felt it was already answered.
Okay, because
She
the
asked
total,
that ahead of she asked that ahead of us clarifying the 700 and 250.
Okay, so maybe she went in and dismissed it. I apologize. It's my first time with one of these meetings. I just don't want to miss anybody.
okay, next question.
Ed Prisby of 25 Daniel Drive. What projects would you potentially be foregoing with an $82,500 yearly bond payment? For instance, we have substantial affordable housing needs in town.
This is Ken Holberger. Let me try to take that one. Right now, we have two bonds that we're paying off, and the bond payments this year total about $145,000 a year. When considering how much bonds a committee such as ours might take, there's a couple of considerations, but one of them is that this committee has decided in the past when discussing the topic that we would not want to take on more in bond payment obligations than 1/2 of the surcharge revenue we receive every year. And so the surcharge revenue we expect to receive in fiscal 2021 is about $475,000. So half of that is $225,000. Our current bond payments are $145,000. That leaves about $81,000 or $82,000 of new bond payments we might take on. Tim has suggested that a bond payment for this might be $85,000, which is approximately that amount. So what that means is that if we were to take on this bond, it would be the last bond we take on until the oldest one pays off 8 years from now. So what is it? What would we not be doing? Well, one thing is that we would have this next year, $250,000 left to grant for other things. And that's in addition to what we're, by the way, that's, including the other things that we're trying to grant now. In particular, the Lions Club, for instance. So it certainly would reduce the number of $100,000 things, grants that we might make for this or that, but it would leave us with about starting $250,000 each year to grant. And that number goes up a little bit. Oh, number one, that number does not include the state match, which could add another $100,000. That makes it $350,000, and it goes up a little every year. So we would, based on those criteria that the committee has been following in the past, we would still be keeping enough money left to do most of the things that come before the committee. What we would not be able to do is to make another bond payment if we wanted to buy, I don't know, if some other important piece of open space property came in front of us, we would not be able to do a bond for that. And it would also be slowing the regrowth of the funds that the committee has. So we might not be able to make a substantial cash payment for a piece of property, a piece of 61A property. So it doesn't break the bank if we did this, but it certainly makes a strong commitment to our funds. Also, for affordable housing, at this point, we have funded several. We turn over our money each year to the Affordable Housing Trust, and we have funded a housing plan for them. And even if we had bonding capacity, I don't think you could build the affordable housing that you needed for $1 million or $2 million. Right. So affordable housing bonding would be done by the Affordable Housing Trust, not by us. So that's really not our question. But we don't have the available resources, even if we saved every penny to do. But to put on the affordable housing topic, we have been transferring 10% of our total revenue, surcharge plus state match, to the Affordable Housing Fund every year. This year, it's going to be $54,000. Next year, it's going to be a little bit more than that. So we'll continue to do that every year, and that won't change. And that's separate from the discussion that I had made before. Okay, is there another question, Joanne?
Sorry, I was muted. No, that's it. That's all I have right now.
Okay. I do have more, Mr. Chair, but I've been asking a lot, so I'll defer to others on the committee before I go next.
Are there any other questions from the members of CPC regarding this proposal?
Jen Thomas?
Yes.
Hi, it's not really a question, but when Ken was talking about the finances, a lot of us have been on the committee for a really long time. And when we first started bonding, our surcharge got us around like $250,000 a year. So just over, the time I've been on the committee, that surcharge has risen from $250 to $475 now. So there's quite a big difference. And I understand what Ken's saying, that in the past, we have had that policy of only bonding half of what our surcharge is. But I just would like to say that if a piece of property does come up, or if we wanted to make another decision, it's just been it's not written down anywhere. It's not a policy. And it's always been, in my understanding, that we cannot bond past our surcharge at all. And I understand keeping a nice cushion, and I definitely agree with that. But I just wanted to.
It's always been a goal.
That's not a law. It's just a practice.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's just the way we've done things in the past.
And the oldest bond has got only it's got 8 years left to go. And actually 8 years does go by fast.
Okay, Justin, you said you had a question?
Yes, I have more than one, but I'm going to start here though. I've been following the stuff with the library as best I could as well. Most select board meetings I watch, and I've been following the updates that come out from Andy. The letter we just received, and then again in this meeting, is the first I've heard about the paving being done in the fall. My understanding is that most construction projects have halted during the pandemic we're going through right now, as well as
Not in Grafton.
yeah, I was getting to that point too. The question I have is, has the library construction project stopped, and what has changed between when we appropriated the money to have DJ's firm draft our master plan for this to now that the library will be being paved in the fall, where last I had heard was the earliest spring 2021. So I wanted to know what had changed there to make that.
I don't know if Tim's still on, but the library is still, construction is going on. They're taking out the oil filter. They took that out yesterday or today. I think in the back, they're beginning of dewatering so that they can get down and do excavation, and they have soil that has to be removed. So all of that is still continuing at this point. Tim, I don't know if you've heard anything else.
No, it just, anything could happen, right? The restrictions go they get tighter and tighter as the days go on in terms of working and being out and what's open and what's closed. I don't know if that's germane to the issue or not. Relative to the timing, Andy made it clear to us at the outreach meeting we had that it was the fall. I think it's mutually exclusive. This project and this master plan that DJ's group has put together had no bearing on the timing of the parking lot at the library.
No, I agree with that. My question was like I didn't hear that at the outreach meeting we had this past month that Andy said it was going to be the fall, and if he did, I apologize on that. But as far as like when Becca responded to, I think it was Ed's question on why now for this for that vote going on to sign DJ's firm, it was said that we want to do it for Maytown meeting, and the library, I remember the question going on, but when the library it will be paved, when that paving will be going down, and I remember hearing explicitly the earliest will be next spring, spring 2021. So I don't know what changed in the timing of when different parts of the library was to happen that we're now paving sooner. That's what I don't understand right now.
Who answered that question for you?
I believe it was Becca that said that at the select board meeting.
You can unmute and answer the question if she remembers it.
I can talk to it if you want, Jen Thomas.
Go ahead.
Justin, you are right. When we first started talking about this project, we were moving forward under the impression that the paving would happen in the spring, but I'm not sure what happened because Andy is not in this meeting, but Andy told us at some point, and I don't remember if it was at that public meeting or not, but he had said that that it's going to be in the fall. So I don't know if Jen Anderson remembers why it changed, but it
Yeah,
has.
Jen Anderson. I do wish Andy was here so he could speak more to the specifics, but the latest he did bring to our attention, we were all under the impression that it was the spring, and that is now still when the final layers are going in. But the fall is when that first level of everything where we would still have to be going through and digging it up would be occurring. So I don't know the specific wording about the differences was happening in the fall and that kind of final, I guess, top layer in the spring. But that's why we're looking at the sooner time frame. So we're still not, making a mess of what they've already accomplished in the fall.
At the last library planning and building, that was discussed, and that it will be done one before and one after the winter.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, from a construction related perspective.
Go ahead.
So what typically happens on a project like this is that they will get the major utility infrastructure in place and then put down the base layer of asphalt, which is the sort of the rough lower portion, in order to give themselves a stable place to park on and do all their various work and so forth related to it. And that usually goes down a fair amount sooner. The final paving is basically the last thing they do on the site, typically, because you want to keep it as clean and pristine as possible for when it opens up to the public. So they'll put in the asphalt early, and the prep of that and the laying of the base layer of asphalt is a fair amount of the cost of the asphalt. And then they come back in later with the paving contractor to do that top course as the very last thing before they pack up and clear out.
Okay.
So that's probably the difference between the fall layer and the spring.
Okay.
That possibly explains it, but I'll certainly reach out to Andy at some point
Yeah.
over the next few weeks and try to find out more detail for sure. But I appreciate that, DJ. Thank you.
Okay. Did you have any other questions, Justin?
Yes, my next comment question is for Jen, and this is I'm going to preface this by the fact that I'm always an evidence-based kind of person. I like to know the reason behind statements of fact, and if we're going to push this forward to town meeting, I want us as a board and myself personally to be able to defend it. So my question is relating to the email that you sent Joanne on March 24th, specifically about, the timing and, why do we need a new playground? Specifically, you wrote, we need a fully accessible ADA compliant inclusive playground and park for all ages and abilities to play together. And there is not a standalone park in town with a playground, nor a playground with a park. And that we're not able to, to paraphrase partially, we're not able to actually, improvements continue to happen, but even when these playgrounds become fully accessible and ADA compliant, they would never be able to be inclusive and for a wide range of ages due to the size and layout. I'm wondering what, what specifically, is wrong there, why, and, what evidence do we have that says we would not be able to actually make these inclusive? What would we be lacking in terms of trying to be able to make these, 10 other playgrounds we have in town inclusive?
Yeah, Jen Anderson. So, mostly playgrounds, which for many, many years, right, have really only been for physical play. And so when we're looking at more of a universal playground, providing for the developmental needs of the whole child, physical, cognitive, communicative, social, emotional, sensory, those are all what's are included in a universally accessible play environment. And so, like I said, many of our playgrounds are very, very small. And so to incorporate those elements along with more ground play and to meet those other needs would be very difficult to happen in that space.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah. I'm Kristen Belanger. I'm on the Recreation Commission with Jen. So one thing too to point out, we're talking about accessibility, and I think your quick question, Justin, was like repurposing current playgrounds to be accessible, and the cost for that. We haven't. What we're talking about with this project, the playground is one component of it, and an accessible playground is something that we're hoping to build. But in addition to that, it's more over the entire parcel, the entire property, and all the other things that are going along with the playground, like the open space and the pavilion and the different aspects of the whole park, which the parks that we have right now, we don't have the land to do those kinds of things around them. So, and the fact that it's centrally located and all the other connections that it has in town or other parks, get in the way. So I just wanted to point out that, that's a good point, converting some of the playgrounds that we have, but this particular project is more than just the playground aspect. So that's all I wanted.
Justin, to convert them, I would assume that for this playground phase is $650,000 to do fencing, paths, playground equipment, and the safe surface. Times 10,
Yeah,
that's a
my
lot more
basic-
than the total project for this cost.
yeah, my basic thought was that, you know, what are we missing at the various things? Is there any that are more suited to get, you know, accessibility? You know, what ones do we not have these types of things at that are town owned? I don't know what evidence the Recreation Commission had to support them making that statement of fact. And that's what I was hoping to hear on that piece. Like, I can understand the, you know, many of the reasons, but to say that we do not have the ability to do this, I don't necessarily see evidence to support that statement.
We have the
That was
ability
why,
to do it. We just don't have the money to do it.
Well, if I may, Jen Anderson could continue to speak here. But yeah, I mean, there are grant opportunities that would give us the ability to look at surfacing for all of our other playgrounds. And again, our equipment itself in those playgrounds are ADA compliant. It's the accessibility portion that need to be working on. And so that will be part of the whole ADA transition plan that we have had done throughout the whole town and what we'll be working towards. But again, looking at the entirety of this whole project, which will include this whole park, and to speak on what Kristen is saying and what I wrote in that email, that this park and this project is more about including all ages, all abilities in the same space, as well as make it inclusive and accessible. So right now, the playgrounds we have, you know, they're for a limited age range, for an example, or they're you know, dominated by a athletic field, which most of them are. So access is difficult. So this is really given the opportunity. It's going to be large. It's going to be centralized. And provide for all ages and ranges to be in one space together.
yeah, and I want to expand on an idea that you just mentioned again, which reminded me, so thank you, is where we have that 100,000, you know, potential max parks grant that we're looking to try to achieve by passing this earlier. And you said there's a bunch of other grants that we could pursue and are available. What can you name or talk to any of those other grants that could as well be used toward our existing parks, even if this does not pass?
Yeah, I'm going through that list. There's many out there. Many or more geared towards towns that are in you know, tougher environments than we are, and they're really trying to get spaces for these kids and these families to be at that don't even exist in town. So I am working through ones that we would qualify for as a town in our scope of project, but let alone just for this park as such, the park grant. There are playground specific ones, there's ADA specific ones. Like I said, there's a very specific dog grant one, that a dog park grant that can be quite large as well. So it's going to kind of depend on that kind of final master, plan design phase. What is it we're really including and really targeting? There's ones that there's grants for the shade shelters for sun care, sun and UV exposure companies. So just defining those elements will really, again, define what we can go towards.
And I vaguely remember, I'm going to ask this as well as a completely different question, but did we build or provision, so to speak, a park in 2010 or right abouts that has like soccer fields and other things with it? I think it was near Lakeview, if I remember the right one.
Riverview?
Maybe. I'm trying to...
Riverview Park is soccer field on Providence Road in South Grafton by the apartments.
Yes. Yeah,
and that's just a field.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, as far as the ADA and open space, things we're looking for that we're expecting to be here at least in phase one, like that park in particular, that's very new, that I don't foresee, just to throw it out there as a thought, I don't know how difficult even just that one park itself would be to bump up in terms of accessibility. You said they're all approximately ADA compliant, which is great news. But just to have these thoughts out there that even if this if this goes to town meeting, I'm afraid that with the fears we have, and I'm afraid with the fears we have as far as health and financial security right now, as well as the idea that we definitely would want to do this before the parking lot is paved over for sure. But all these types of things and the potential override, I fear that it's not going to pass. And if that's the case, I want to try to expand on the ideas on what else could we try to do as a town and as with CPC money in potentially to add these features to existing play areas that we have. That
Riverview
still meet
Park
some of the
is
same
just a
goals.
field. I don't know that there's even excess land that we own that you could put a play structure. I think it's just a gravel parking lot. And I think, just to correct me if I'm wrong, Jen Anderson, you said the equipment is ADA compliant, the playgrounds are not.
Yeah, it's more about accessibility. So, our playground is considered compliant, but again, there's certain percents that you need to have when you have elevated structures versus ground structures. I'm really working on reviewing those sorts of items. We will have to eventually change over that surfacing, but it's more about accessibility to the actual playground itself and to the actual play features. So I think that ADA transition plan is on the website, and so people can see everything that's been noted from those consultants of what needs to be addressed in each park, prioritized and funding wise, and those sorts of things that we will be addressing. But
If I can, I'd like to confirm that we looked at that ADA transition plan, so I confirm it is on the website. And it was pretty helpful in terms of getting a picture of what the town already has in terms of play equipment. And to Justin's point, I think that you could hypothetically replace the non-accessible surfacing or the add accessible routes to those playgrounds. And you would get a fully ADA compliant playground in the letter of the law, but it wouldn't be inclusive in the spirit the way Jen was talking about earlier in terms of addressing the broader spectrum of users and the full range of needs of development in terms of sensory play and so forth. So the goal is really here to provide a fully inclusive playground from the get-go that's unlike any of the other equipment that you have in town to date.
And again, it's not just about the playground. It's looking at encompassing the whole park and making that be accessible and inclusive. And we just do not have a space like that in town.
John, we have 2 more questions that have come in.
Okay.
The first one is from Margaret Haynes. I don't have her address. I've asked her to send it to me. So I'm going to go to the other one from Ed Prisby, 25 Daniel Drive.
Yes.
He asks if we're committing 1.1 to 2.6 million to this park, where are we getting money to transition the other parks?
So I mean, I can speak partially to that. That's part of what we're going to be addressing with the transition plan and working with the Disability Commission and reviewing that. Again, one of the grant opportunities through a park grant, which we can apply for multiple within the municipality could include surfacing for all of the other playgrounds in the other parts of town. So that's going to be something that we'll be looking towards applying for as well. And that's going to meet our immediate needs on the surfacing. And then we'll be working on the accessible route to those playgrounds as well, which a lot of that I envision would be able to be a internal, mostly internal project in kind.
Jen Thomas, can I jump in for a second? John?
Yes.
I just want to clarify that even these other playgrounds in town, if what Jen's saying I think is getting missed, if we change the surfacing and we change the approach to these playgrounds, the actual equipment that exists on those playgrounds currently is not inclusive to the way that this new equipment would be. So you could get to everything on the ground, but you couldn't, there wouldn't be any special slides or special spinners or special panels or specialized equipment. So even if we manage, even when we're able to get kids to the playground that might have some disabilities, those other playgrounds don't have the specialized equipment, and to replace that specialized equipment to replace the equipment we have with specialized equipment would certainly cost a lot of money, as you've seen. Just to have the specialized equipment in this proposal is very expensive. So that's it.
And I'll add to that, Jen, just to basically second that. I do agree that the equipment in this plan is much more accessible and a lot better in my mind than any park I've ever visited in town. And I do think this is, the equipment in this plan is definitely a good step forward that this town should invest in one way or the other.
Okay, any other questions, Justin?
John, I just have a comment from Margaret Haynes, 25 Trinity Avenue.
Okay.
She says, I'm very familiar with the Riverview Park. It may be ADA compliant, but it's difficult for older adults. The example she gives is no places to sit. It's also for smaller children and is more connected to the soccer field than to the general town.
Okay, thank you. Justin, did you have another question, or did you get all yours questions asked?
I believe I have all mine answered, and I appreciate you and the committee entertaining all my thoughts and questions here. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any other, do you have any other questions or comments that you would like to ask at this time? Okay, then I will say that we have fully discussed this, and we appreciate Jen Anderson attending to address these, and DJ for helping us out with the details of this proposed project.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Okay, I am going to.
And we also know that on the Riverview Park, we know exactly where that sign is supposed to be, right, Ken?
Right. It's in the right place.
Okay. So do we need to discuss any, I think Paul was going to address the project. Candy LaValle's not here. Paul, would you like to add anything to the request by the town clerk for historic records preservation?
I didn't have anything new to address, John, but
Okay.
anyone had questions about it?
Are
Certainly.
there any questions about the project, the proposed project?
I think the explanation that she provided at our meeting last month was right on. And I don't think anyone had any questions leaving that meeting.
Okay.
Well, what's really nice is, if John, I could speak for a second, Candy has done a nice job kind of reinvigorating this project. This is the oldest one I believe we have on the books. It's the only one I think we still have on the books that didn't have a sunset period. Those funds were gone. So this would be a new one, and I'm assuming we would put a sunset period on this one. I think she's anticipating that we would do that. And I don't think that it's going to sit by the wayside. She really seems interested in moving it forward. And I know she's got, I forget his full name, but the additional staff member that was hired, Paul, has a background in historical type things. And so it's an interest of his as well. So I think it's a great time to move forward with all of this and preserve our historical records.
If I may, Paul, may I just ask you to give a brief summary for the people that are on this call that may not have witnessed the meeting last that we had for what Candy's question is?
Sure. So this is the Town Records Restoration Project. Like I said, we originally provided money, and I don't know what the original amount was because it predates my involvement with the board, but it was a project that was one of the first ones, and we didn't have a sunset period on it. It kind of moved along in drips and drabs. And there was some funds that were left in it. Candy picked up the ball with those, and just this past year preserved a number of documents and is now looking to move to the next one. So she's requesting $5,000. She has a list of the documents that were to be preserved. They included a list of school notes, a license record, school committee records, intention of marriage records, births and deaths, marriage records, death records, and all this stuff, dates back way back. In fact, when she was there, she had indicated there was stuff that dates back to the incorporation of the town, 1735. So there's a lot of neat things that need to be preserved, and that's exactly what our charge is, and what these funds are intended to do. Historical preservation is a big piece of it. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding that proposed warrant article? Okay. Ken, if you want to do a treasurer's report so that we have a financial.
Okay. Joan, can you put up the image of the treasurer's report, or would you like me to try to do that?
No, I can. Just, you have to give me 1 second.
And while she's doing that, just so that you know, we're going to do the treasurer's report. We're skipping all around this. I apologize. Then we're going to review the warrant articles and vote on them. And then the last piece that we need to do is address the community preservation plan update. And hopefully we can do that quickly. So everything else, I think, unless somebody has an issue, we will pass over the other items for next meeting, and hopefully we will be together for the next meeting.
Does everyone see it?
Okay, Joan, can you flip to page 2?
Yes.
This is, So this is the ending for fiscal 2020, which we happen still to be in. The revenue number for the surcharge at the top is still estimated from last year because we haven't closed this year yet, so we don't know what it is exactly, but that's going to be close. The state match started out to be 55,168, but if you look on line 14, the additional state match came in, moving it to be over $100,000, $108,000 at 23.9%. So you can see what we did. We did we did 650K for the Grafton Common restoration, 41 for the Lions Club, and some other things. Joan, can you roll to the bottom of that page? And you can see there in the shaded, the blue shaded area that we're in the special town meeting coming up in May or April or whenever we have it. We're going to transfer the Affordable Housing Trust reserve to the Affordable Housing Trust. Well, that's not exactly correct, but we're going to transfer that. And these reports now have a summary at the bottom, a summary of the summary. It basically tries to put it into fewer lines. It shows that we came into 2020 with an undesignated fund balance of $660,000 and $91,000 in reserves. We added $592,000 of revenue. That's surcharge plus match plus interest. So we're starting with $1.3 million, and you can see the grants. We made bond payments of 150, grants of 836,000. That's pretty big. And we had expenses of $24,000, and that left us with $335,000 all told. So we'll move to the previous page where we have fiscal 2021. since we don't, our estimate for revenue is just 2.5% more than it was, it's more than we estimated for the prior year. So the precision of that estimate is diverging, but it's still not going to be material for our purposes. We have no clue what the state match is going to be. They restructured the way the fund is funded completely from the way it used to be. Plus, so that's going to be different. And last year, it was the old structure plus just a new pile of money. And so we have no idea what to guess for this year. So we just took exactly the same as we did last year. It's like the IRS when you're estimating your taxes. Just pay them what you paid last year. So we don't know whether that $110,000 is accurate or not. So that's an imprecise guess as well.
Paul, did you have a question?
I just wanted to interject. I know we don't know what to expect, but our expectation is that it's going to be significantly higher.
That's true. We hope it'll be higher. So that's why we use the number that we had. So the $600,000 is a guess. It's a wilder guess than it usually is when we try to do our 10% reserves. We know we've always done our 10% reserves in October when we had better guesses. But the Community Preservation Coalition suggests that every other town does it in the spring, mostly because they don't have October meetings. And so we're trying to do it in the spring now too to match everybody else. So what that means is that our estimates are less precise, but they are what they are, and it's $60,700 each. So that subtracted from our surcharge leaves us with the revenue amount of $409,000, and that we vote that into what we now call the budgeted reserve. We used to call it fund balance for CPA purposes, a name that no one has any idea what it meant. Okay, so we're not contemplating yet anything coming out of that fund, out of the revenue block. Now, if we do the Super Park, the $250,000 will come out of that first line, the first blue shaded May 20 annual town meeting line. That's where it'll go. And so it's not a precise number, but it's certainly $250,000 would fit in there. So let's roll down to the carried over fund block. This is the undesignated fund balance as we expect it might finish up this coming June 30th. And so that is a even less precise estimate. And well, it is what it is. We're specifying that the Lions Club property improvement grant, should we vote it, would come from this amount, from this group. And it leaves $126,000, and that's sort of well within our margin of error. Moving down to the reserve funds, we have two bond payments, and after we bring in the ending reserves from last year and add to it the 10% amounts that we just saw, that leaves the numbers that you see on the upper right-hand corner, the 111,000, 78,000, and 60,000 for the three reserves. The first two are big enough to handle the bond payments, so we are deducting the bond payments from their respective reserve, open space and historical. And the town records restoration at $5,000, should we agree to that, it would come also from the reserve. That's going to pretty much empty the historic reserve and mostly empty the open space and recreation reserve, leaving those amounts at the bottom. So before, if we do all the grants that we've talked about and not yet add in a grant for the super fund or super park, that leaves us with a total of $568,000 left over. So it's not enough to fund the whole super park, but enough to get started on it. If you move down just a little bit to look at the summary of the summary. So you can see our incoming and undesignated balance and reserves. The revenue estimate gets us up to $942,000. Bond payments, 145. Grants short of the super park are 205,000, 206,000. Expenses 24, and that leaves us with the $568,000. So if we were to do the super park, we would make the cash grant out of the revenue funds this year, and it would reduce those numbers by almost a factor of 2. So we'd have about half of that money left, which is, you know, it's starting to get down towards the bottom, but it's not an unreasonable thing to consider.
There's, Ken, there's also going to be returned between both of the, because it looks like both of these years show up on here of our administrative expense because we don't spend the full 24,000. You budget for it, and if we spend half of it.
Right, so that might add $10,000 or $12,000 back, but again, that's kind of like that's like the third, the
then we're also
second or third significant figure.
But we're also going to get back $50,000, $50,000 from the Dauphiné Park, the Lions Club. So that's, you know,
the Lions Club. It sounded to me like we might get $10,000 or $12,000 back from them.
No, it's like they were only spent $10,000 on engineering, so then the bulk of that's going to come back.
Maybe 30 then. So
you know, at least $50,000 more. Again, we're being very conservative, but we'll
probably. So yeah, those numbers. I'm not sure when the Lions Club money would show up. It might not show up until the following year.
It'll show up because it's
right. If they don't close it out before the end of June, that number won't show up here. It'll be there, but it won't show up till the end of June.
Okay.
But your point is that it is there even if it doesn't.
Right.
We still hasn't been closed out yet.
Then we're still being very conservative.
Right. This is pretty conservative. I will admit that. So
may I stop sharing this document for a moment?
May you stop sharing it?
Yeah, are you done with this? Because I can't see, and this is probably a user issue, but I can't see if anybody's asking any questions.
Okay, you can close it. We're done with it.
Oh, I just figured out a way.
Well, we're still done with it. Unless there are questions.
Let me see. Jen Anderson actually had something she wanted to add. I don't know if Jen's still on and she just wants to say this or if she wants me to read this.
There are 2 blocks with her name on it, but they look like they're silenced.
I'm here. I got a phone and a computer going. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Did you want to say this? Okay.
No, I wanted to expound further, if I could, on Ed's question regarding the funding for accessibility of the other parks. We obviously would also be looking at using our existing maintenance funds and revolving funds to put towards the project. We've already used, just recently, the past couple of years, revolving funds to make some great improvements, including new swings and a shade structure at Ferry Street, a new main structure at Airport Park, a new main structure and new expanded swings at Perry Hill. That main structure at Perry Hill was not ADA compliant, and that's why we did that, to move towards these strides. And we've also added picnic tables in all the playgrounds. So I just wanted to put in part of this format, I know I emailed you guys that, but to let people know that we are making these improvements in these strides towards our other playgrounds as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion do I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
Okay, there's one more
Second.
topic there's one more topic that is at hand if you want to have further discussion.
Okay, wait. I think we need to let the motion die for lack of a second so that we can go back to Ken. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Not hearing a second. Your motion fails. Sorry about that, Jim. I jumped the gun. Ken?
Okay, the other topic is of the bond that we're contemplating. Tim suggested that we could do it, well, I'm just wondering if I can throw up something here. Hang on a second. I'm trying to speculate whether I can screen share one. I want to screen share one file, but all I see is for the whole screen. I've done this before. It didn't work. Well, never mind. Let me just talk to it. In the past, when deciding, you know, considering whether or not we might bond something, we always asked and answered the question, well, what's our maximum potential, you know, bond ability? And there is.
Ken, you're still sharing, just to let you know.
I'm doing what?
You're still screen sharing, just to let you know.
What screen am I? What screen that? That's the wrong screen.
There you go.
Okay. Actually, you can see this screen. It's awfully big, just for one little. Can you guys see this?
Not yet.
It's a Excel spreadsheet in the middle of a big screen.
Right this second, you're not sharing anything.
I'm not sharing anything. Okay. Oh, I have to hit share. There we go.
Yes.
You got this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, all we want to really look at is this. Can you see that?
Maximum
No,
bond
no.
potential analysis.
Right. It says maximum bond potential analysis. This does a couple of calculations. One is that it says, well, our surcharge is 476 and we've got some reserves. The state says legally we can only bond up to that amount, which would be a total payments of $356,000 right here. And that would leave only $120,000 for anything else, plus the state match, which is that's the far end of what we could do legally. We've been talking about sort of limiting the bond payment to being half of that, and this is not half of that. Half of this 476, which is this amount here, and there, the 226, and so that would leave, you know, about the same amount for other grants. What Jennifer Thomas suggested was that we could do more than this, and that's true. We could do more than that. But if we did stick to that, subtracting the two bond payments we have, that leaves us, you know, to stay within that guideline, we would need a bond payment of no more than $81,000. And you know, Tim suggested that his bond, the bond he was proposing was $85,000, which is certainly in the ballpark of that. And, you know, if we wanted to do it, we could, but it would limit our ability to do any more big things. It would be the one big thing that we can do for the next 8 years. And Tim, are you there? He's muted, and his
I
screen's-
want to just, I need to jump in. John, you have 30 minutes left on this meeting.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out a way to extend the time, but I can't seem to find anything that lets me do that.
Okay, I'll net it out. If we were to do that bond, if that bond that Tim mentioned was available, and it's a better deal than I can that I contemplate with my calculations. If that deal was available, you know, we could do it, but it would be at the high end of what we'd want to be doing. So.
Okay.
So I mean, I just, you know, banking software being what it is, you can figure out an amortization pretty quickly. So I took 700,000, did it at 7 years at 4%, and that's how I got the
7 years at 4%. Is it 7 years?
Nope, 10 years.
10 years. Yeah, I did the same thing with in my calculations, and I got something a little different than that. So maybe I'd like to see what you did, and if I agree, I'd like to see what you did.
Yeah, I can't see what what you have on your schedule there. For that one.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to go through all the formulas or anything, but I would like to see your schedule, and if it's good, that's good. So I guess to net it out, saying is that a bond like that could be done, but that will, it won't take up all the cash that we have for, medium-sized grants, but we won't be able to do anything big for another, probably, well, all the bond, the bond payments actually do reduce over time. So it would be, on the order of 10 years before we could do another serious purchase. So that's it.
This is, if you just can ask a question. So just relative to, big things that we might want to do, we just did the open space and rec plan, which is pretty important for the community to have. And you all kind of know the lay of the land. You've been doing this a while in terms of, what the asks are and what out there that's being asked for in the community. This has been ongoing since, 2012 when the high school was built. So are there other things that are competing? We should talk about if there's things that we think that are out there, real, wished for, or imagined. Maybe this competing interest is worthy in some people's mind, but maybe not worthy as you compare it to those other things that are wished for, real, or imagined. So if are there things we should consider those, because we certainly don't want to cut anything else off.
Yeah, except that this is real, and the other things are just things that might happen.
Yeah. So
this is real, though.
Yeah, we got to pick.
We've always been asking, like, what do you think is going to come out of 61A? And is it something we'd be interested in? That's the only other thing I can think of is when we're thinking of a big ask.
There's only two things that I can think of. And, I think that, in 4 or 5 years, that Robinson's going to come out with the rest of the property on Silver Lake. And that could be, around 500K, maybe a little more. And maybe by then, the CPA would have accumulated that much.
Well, just remember, you're not the only, you are a resource for these 4 parameters. Town meeting can allocate resources for other things in the community. So we have more resources than what's here, correct?
Yeah, and further down the line, probably, no sooner than 10 years, Robinson might want to sell the property on the other side of the road opposite Silver Lake. And that would be a major bond issue, because that'd be $2 million or more.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's that kind of be out of the scope of this, I think.
You would need a multitude. There's like the Pell property. You had, the land trust, not the land trust, but the
TPL.
Yeah, and you guys with the bonding, those 2 pieces had to come together to secure the Pell property.
Anyway, that's what I had to say.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it, Ken? So we can
That's it.
entertain a motion.
I'd
Jim,
like
would
to
you
make
like?
a motion that we accept the treasurer's report.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Justin?
It was.
Right, second by Justin. Is there any discussion? I'm gonna roll call. Unfortunately, we got to do this. Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
All right.
Jen Thomas.
Aye.
Declare the motion carried. So,
John, you have a question that came in.
Okay.
Colleen Roy, 53 Elmwood Street, is asking, would a turf field at the school be a project that CPC could fund?
That seems like that's a maintenance because they would be replacing, I'm not, at the high school you said? Or at-
Yes,
or-
yes, yep.
I think that would be maintenance. I don't know that we could do that.
It's
We
not-
wouldn't be constructing the field.
It also seems, it seems like that the same kind of thing that we passed over in that South Grafton Elementary School.
Right, that we're trying to do things that the whole town can utilize, and the field would only be for high school age students.
And that aside, my understanding is it's not an allowable expense.
Okay. So, thank you for the question. Is that the only other question that you have at the time?
Yes, but we also got another hour. Thank you, Becca.
Okay.
So you have until 11.
And we're not
But
using it.
You don't need to use it, right, but you have it.
So what we're gonna do, we have two more things now. We need to review the actual warrant articles and vote on them. And then we will discuss the CPC project update so I can get some information back to our consultant. And then we'll call it a night. So we have Joanna's prepared, and I need to thank her now because I know it's going to get forgotten at the end. You don't know how many untold hours it took to put this together for tonight. She has been working on this since last week. And I know just the last 2 days, she and I have been working, and I know she's worked many hours. So we want to thank her. This is very labor intensive and not easy to do. So thank you so much to Joanne, and I guess Becca has helped you a lot as well to make this happen. We appreciate it.
Becca was everything. She drove the whole thing. So
You
and
both
dealt
were-
with somebody.
you were doing a tandem bicycle on this one.
Do you want me to put the warrant articles on the screen?
Sure, that would be helpful. Thank you. The first warrant article is going to be for special town meeting, which is for the Affordable Housing Trust transfer. And it's to see if the town will vote to transfer $53,957 to the CPA Affordable Housing, from the CPA Affordable Housing Reserve account to the Grafton Affordable Housing Trust. Does anyone have any discussion on that article? If not, do I have a motion to?
So moved.
And that's
Second.
Jim made a motion, and it sounded like Justin made a seconded.
I did.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, and we're going to go down again. Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
and Jen Thomas.
Aye.
I declare the motion carried. Okay, the second article is for town meeting, 2020 town meeting. These are the reserves, and this is all into one article. We've changed that. And the appropriation for administrative expense is $24,000. For historic preservation reserve is $60,701. Affordable housing reserve, $60,701. Open space reserve, $60,701. Estimated revenues for budgeted reserve, $400,905. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I think that was Paul. Do I have a second?
Second.
Justin seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, John, you mentioned that we're not spending the whole $24,000. Do you know how much of it that we are?
Okay, about half. Joanne would probably spend $1,500 on Community Preservation Coalition, $100, $200 on advertising. So,
What's it-
$2,000 there. And then for Joanne's salary, which has
About
not,
5,000 a year.
So what's the total?
I think you're looking you're looking about $8,000 probably.
Really?
Not for me, but that's for, because the coalition is 1,700.
Enough, Joanne.
Yeah, the coalition 1,700. Mine's probably about 5,000. I haven't worked a full year yet.
But it's under, so the whole thing is under $10,000?
Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
So that's
Okay.
why I was saying we were going to get so much of that back for both of those years. I mean, it's a significant,
All right.
not in the grand scheme of things, but it all adds up. Okay, that was the discussion. I've forgotten. Did we have a second?
We did.
I had seconded.
All those in favor? Did I ask that? I'm sorry.
Do a roll call.
You got me. I'm sorry.
We'll do a roll call.
Okay, so we'll do it again. Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Thomas. Declare the motion carried. Okay, so that's appropriations. The
I
next,
apologize. Could you tell me who made the motion and seconded it again?
Paul made the motion and Justin made this and seconded.
Thank you.
Can I ask an unrelated question? Are you able, did my camera go off? Because I've got like a little, like Monopoly guy up there where I used to be
Did.
before.
You went away. You're just a name on a box.
Do we know why?
Your camera's off.
Something on your-
We're
There
being
is a
recorded,
button
so I
to
can't say.
stop video.
Oh,
There you
there
go,
I
you're
am.
back.
I must have
Probably
hit that when
timed
I
out.
tried to mute.
What?
He's probably just timed out or he hit something, so he's all set.
All right, moving on. Pell Farm bond payment, $73,150 for payment number 12 out of 20 for the $1.2 million bond. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
That was Justin. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Paul. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jen Thomas.
Aye.
Declare the motion carried. The next warrant article is Grafton Townhouse bond payment, $71,550. Payment 6 out of 20 on the $1.1 million bond. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
By Paul, do I have a second?
Second?
By Jim. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jen Thomas.
Aye.
I declare the motion carried. The next article is to extend a sunset for Institute Woods Recreation Trail feasibility study.
John, if I may?
Yep.
I was speaking with Chris McGoldrick about that. There's a great possibility that that won't even need to be extended. He's spoken with the consultant. They think they will be wrapped up by June 30th. I've put that on there because we just want to make certain.
Okay.
It's really a housekeeping item.
Or should we vote on it, or is it?
Oh, yeah, no, I just wanted to explain why I had done that in case anybody
Okay.
was wondering.
Okay, well, I know it's close to finish, but that's appreciate it. Thank you.
With everything going on right now, it could get delayed.
Exactly. All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
That was Justin and a second by Paul. Is there any discussion? So everyone
I do
understands.
have,
This is
will you talk
just,
to me, Jen, or do you feel me?
wait just
I do have a
second.
question if Tim's on. Sorry, I apologize.
Just to clarify, this is not to grant funds. This is only to extend the sunset to
Yes.
June 30th, 2022. So it's by 2 years. Do you still need to speak to Tim?
Yes, my only question on this is like procedurally and stuff, because I might chat to people and may get a question. If our town meeting gets postponed till past June 30th, do we know how this warrant article and the sunset would be affected? If
Well-
we don't, I understand.
If we don't need the warrant article, because suppose everything gets wrapped up by May 15th, we can pass over this.
Yeah, my question is more, if we do need the warrant article, but our town meeting itself is postponed because of.
Oh, I see
coronavirus
what you're
situation.
saying. I'm sorry.
My understanding is that time goes forward. So the time limits, for example, filing of your income tax is a forward time. So I think the addition of time is granted by the governor.
Tim, do you want to take a crack at it?
Yeah, we just don't know, but that would be logical, provided the legislation calls for it. We'll make sure that any further language relative to resetting or allowing the reset of town meeting contemplates those decisions on sunsetting legislation.
All right, thank you, Tim.
Okay, thank you. So any further discussion? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
That was
Jen Thomas.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Declare that motion carried. Town Records Restoration Project. This is for $5,000 for restoration of historic town records to be expended by June 2020, June 30th. That didn't get included, did Joanne? I just noticed that. There you go.
Put in a sunset. Am I?
You
No.
are, or
Okay.
are you not?
I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
No. Yes. Are you putting the sunset in or not?
I was not, and I did that based upon the last one and the concern over the fact that these documents go out very slowly and come back. And that to put a sunset on it, it's a very small amount of money. I think we would just be coming back here in 2 years to extend that sunset potentially.
Can't we just do like a 4-year sunset period?
I was just going to say that I think what we we don't want to get into one of those situations where we pick and choose who gets the sunset. So I'm thinking we're better off giving a sunset to all of our items. And as Paul just said, we can always make this one a 4-year sunset.
So do you want to make this a 4-year sunset then?
I motion that we make this a 4-year sunset.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Motion by Paul, second by Jim, to extend the Town Records Restoration Project through June 30th, 2024. Any discussion? All those in favor? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jen Thomas.
Aye.
Okay. Joint, what I was going to say, it just says June 2022. It doesn't have the 30.
Oh.
That's all I was. That's all I was trying to say. Okay. The next, Lions Club property recreational improvements, 140,000.
Point of order, Mr. Stevens.
Justin.
I'm okay if people were thinking this as well, but I took that motion as just adding the sunset to the warrant article, not actually voting on the warrant article. My vote wouldn't change either way, frankly, but I didn't know, that's how I took the motion.
Okay, then we'll do that. Just only change the sunset. We will now need to vote on the actual $5,000 appropriation
So moved.
for restoration of historical town records to be expended by June 30th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
Justin did.
So moved.
I didn't. Who made the motion?
Justin.
Justin moved and Paul seconded.
Okay, so you got it. Any discussion? All those in favor? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Jen.
Aye.
I declare the motion carried for $5,000. The next warrant article, Lions Club property recreational improvements, $140,000 from
So moved.
and again, that needs a date, June 30th, Joanne. There's a motion by Jim and a second by Paul.
Sure.
Okay, I just saw movement. I didn't. So a motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? You think I'd have this memorized? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
No?
Aye.
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 Jen,
Aye.
declare the motion carried. Okay, the last warrant article is for the super park. And I think I need help from Ken. I don't know. if I see him. There he is.
If Tim is still on, I'd like to see that bond schedule sheet that he had.
Tim is silenced.
Yeah, I'm coming back up now.
Okay.
So again, I use the banking software for an amortization schedule, and that's,
Does that include discounts and uneven payments of unequal payments of principal?
no, we try to, every bond issue we try to do even principal to, not in this case, but in every other case where we try to not have big spikes for the taxpayer. So that's just level debt service for the 10 years. That's what comes out to the
What interest rate did you use?
4%.
4? I did the same thing, and I came out with, I guess, not as good a deal as you did.
Well, the percentage rate's going to drive the annual cost. Unless I did the math wrong on the monthly, the rate was like 7,900.
It's just compounded annually, right? With 2 payments compounded annually?
Simple interest.
It's really simple.
Yeah. So it's what the debt service is on a monthly basis times 12, obviously, and that's what it comes out to at 4%.
I did it on an annual basis because we pay semi-annually. So I didn't do it monthly. And that may have come up with a difference, as you did it monthly and I did not. I did it annually, which is what we do, which is how we pay it.
Well, usually you do it twice a year, right? You do interest in the spring and then principal in the
We
fall.
do, but the interest is calculated annually. We just pay it biannually.
Yeah, we know that we're getting things like the water district in Auburn went out to bid right when this crisis started to happen, and they had one proposal for 1.8%. So a 4%, I'm hedging very high to be conservative.
The thing is, you can almost do it in your head. You're going to pay $70,000 of principal per year, and the first payment is going to be 4% of the full $700,000 for interest. And so that's 4% times 700 plus 70,000, and that's number is bigger, I think, than what.
Well, yeah, that's at a 140 figure, but you're going to pay, if it's level service over the 10 years for everything else we borrowed, that's what the number worked out on the schedule that I have. I don't have the schedule because I did it online.
Oh, I see.
How much are you getting, Ken? How much more.
Let me show, tell you in just a second here.
There's a question from Colleen.
I'd say that the first year's payment of that loan would be $98,000.
Is that a,
70,000 plus 4% of 700,000. So 70,000 plus 28,000 is 98,000. It's pretty simple. And so I'd say the first payment is $98,000. It goes down from there, but it starts at it. You know, the first 3 years are above $90,000. So I'm not sure. You know, I would like to have enough time to consult the treasurer to see what they say. You know, the first year's the principal payments every year would be $70,000, and then you just pay interest on top of that. And the first year's interest is $28,000. That's $98,000.
Okay, so Ken, if you want to wait to get numbers or compare numbers or process with Tim, we can still
I would, yeah, the
we
200.
can still vote on this project and drop a number in later, but we would have to meet again to approve that number.
I think that what we can do is, you know, the $250,000, you know, I would recommend that, you know, we could do that, you know, without any trepidation. It's just the bond, it's the question mark in my mind.
John, may I jump in for a minute?
Yes, please.
There's a question from Colleen Roy, 53 Elmwood Street. She wants to know if the bond is for 7 or 10 years.
10.
10 years.
10 years. And
That's appropriate. A property or a building like the townhouse is appropriate to do 20 years, but the super park, you know, Tim suggested 10, and I concur with that, because that's, you know, a reasonable lifetime expectation for the asset.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add what John was saying before. What you really need to do tonight procedurally is get the placeholders on the warrant. So you could make a motion to move this warrant article forward without any of the money figured out. And at the April meeting, you could have that information and vote on that then.
John, question.
Yes.
So I know, Ken, you're thinking 10 is appropriate, and obviously Tim does as well, since that's what he had recommended. Are there options other than 10 and 20? Are there 15-year?
I imagine.
Tim.
My quick calculation says that a 15-year bond would start out paying $74,600.
So Ken, is your concern that this is going to bump us over our self-imposed goal of only 50% bonding of the surcharge?
Yeah, my concern is not that it goes over a little. My concern is that it goes over a little bit more than a little.
Okay, well, Joanne just told you we don't spend most of our administrative budget, and we're going to get, so to me, this is not that much, if that's the concern.
Yeah.
I certainly would want you and Tim to work this out, and Anita to have you have comfortable with the numbers, but
right.
Whether it's 74,000 or 84 or 94,000 for the first year, that shouldn't hold us up. I don't think.
John, can I ask a question to Ken?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ken, would you feel more comfortable if we did a little bit higher cash payment? Or is the 250 as high as you feel like we should go for that money at hand payment? And bond a little less? we're
Yeah,
just
you
curious.
know, maybe, you know, we might do 300 instead of 250, but I don't think that's going to make a material difference. Let me just take a look. Um, You know, I think what John suggested is if we put the structure in there and we just leave the actual numbers blank, we could jigger them one way or the other, like as you just suggested.
Joanne actually
The length of the,
brought me up to speed on that, so it's not that I'm creating that.
My
But we do need
my
to
one
have
question.
a placeholder. That's critical that we do that tonight,
Okay, well, let me try something. So,
because the deadline is tomorrow to have these in.
I'll move that. Let's see, where is that? Let me find that.
Well, just a second. Justin, did you have a comment or a question? You're silent.
You
Mute.
can move forward. I'm sorry, I was gonna
Okay.
go back
No,
to
I
Ken's
just-
about to address it.
Why don't we say something that starts out as we have now, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $250,000 from what do we call it? From Community Preservation Fund annual revenues. And I believe that there's language that we put in there for a bond, and it's probably canned language that we want to call up from somewhere. Is that correct, Joanne?
We just looked to the one
Yes.
above it,
can we look, John, may I talk for a minute?
for the purpose of making,
Okay, if we go on and saying for the purpose of doing the inclusive playground park, we want to mention that this is like phase one, and maybe say that what it includes.
Can I interrupt? Paul Scarlett has a question.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So I'm not sure if this is the direction you're thinking of going in, Ken, but I think John mentioned it. Is it feasible for us to make a motion that talks about the total amount of funding that we need, but doesn't go into specifics about how we're doing it, whether or not we have a 15 versus 10 versus 20-year bond versus 250 versus 300 cash? It just talks about the total with the understanding that we can revisit it in April and make the decisions as to this.
I think the answer to that is we need to specify the bond in the language of the way CPA groups are supposed to specify their bonds, which would include, a placeholder for the various parameters like numbers, principal amount, number of years, and principal amount and number of years. So we would have to mention that in the language. Would that be correct, Joanne?
It is, but I think what Paul is getting at is you can move forward with a motion for this warrant to go forward without having any of the dollar amounts in there.
Right, but we need to have the structure, the language structure in there.
But I don't even know that you would have to have all of that bond language structured. It would just say that you intend to fund this project. And then in April, we can get the language around that.
So the language would have to go into the warrant, correct?
not at this time. This is a placeholder, but
I think I understand where you're going with this, Ken, and I honestly, I would almost, I don't know if Tim or Rebecca can answer this. You're wondering if we need to say in this warrant article, we're going to use cash on hand as well as a bond.
Correct.
Yeah, I would recommend you do 2 articles, right?
I
Because
was
one,
gonna say we need two.
I'm sorry, Tim McInerney, if I didn't announce myself again. So you should do 2. One, because it's going to take 2/3 majority for the borrowing piece of the 700,000, and the other piece is the 250 or whatever number we agreed to that's on hand to pay cash. So you should just have, I would recommend you have 2. We always, because things move constantly, it's always a sum of money to vote to raise and appropriate or otherwise borrow a sum of money. And then in the motion, you put that particular piece. Finance committee never likes that, and we acknowledge that. But, you know, I just did a mortgage calculation thing online on an amortization. The highest payment I got was 84 and change at 4%. So Ben and I can get together offline, but if you just go with a sum of money with two separate articles, one to borrow and one for the 250 from existing funds, I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, can we query the treasurer?
Yeah, while we were talking, I did send them an email, and I sent David Eisenthal at Unibank an email too, so he can do an,
And
Excel spreadsheet that shows you an amortization schedule that is verified by a bank.
That'd be
And
great.
I do have a comment question about what you just said, Tim, specifically, is that doing two warrant articles where to do the project, even with phase one, just the utilities and just the phase one of the play structures, we're looking at just shy of $1 million, 924,000. I don't think it's fair to the town to say, here's two warrant articles, vote on both, you know, and if we don't get the 2/3, then we now have, you know, $250,000 that we really have no real sense of doing anything with. I think my personal feeling, it should be one, even though we only need.
And that, I would just tell you that, again, we don't want to miss an opportunity. So if we can get those utilities put in at minimum, and the majority of the people feel that that's the right thing to do, that's probably the right thing to do. Since the high hurdle is 2/3, if we miss that by 5 or 6 votes, we hurt the community financially in the long term, because the majority of the people wanted to do the super park. They just don't want to borrow it. So they may want to come to do that.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Like my thought too is that the 273,000 was quoted as being the utilities and parking. If we're just doing utilities, that was, if I recall correctly, less than 50. You know, about 50,000, and then I think that's what it was.
I mean, the spreadsheet's huge in terms of what that number is. I thought it was 275. Using
It was 273, but that was utilities and parking is what DJ said. I wrote this down.
Plus, the account over still has about $230,000 in it.
That's exactly
Which would
my
have to
point.
be
We have, that's what I was getting to. We have an account that has at least 200,000 in it, roughly, and then that we could use to lay utilities with the vote of select board.
And that account would have to be spent first anyway.
Exactly. So I don't see the need to have the extra warrant article for town meeting to say, you know, that's just a half pass if we can't get the full 2/3 majority pass as well.
Well, that's up to the committee, right?
Well, unless we could identify some aspect that it would cover.
Well, DJ's still on the call, so maybe we can ask him.
I'm available if needed.
So do you want to provide some clarification for the infrastructure that we might need if we didn't get the full funding?
Sure. Let me pull that back up. The infrastructure, simply to build out the utilities, I think, Justin, the number you were remembering of 50,000 was actually the additional cost to do it.
Well, that's right. You did say 100,000 for utilities now that
I think that it's in the 100 to 120 range, without actually having calculated it just based on that. But I'm pulling back up my cost estimate to take another look and double check myself there.
While he's checking that, could the town moderator rule that out of order because you need 2/3, so you do need it to be clean because part of it's 2/3 and part of it's not? Should they technically be separated?
Paul, Scarlett, we separated, I don't know, did we do 1 or 2 articles for the townhouse?
2.
Pardon me?
2.
2?
It's Tim.
Yes.
Could that be a problem on town meeting floor where he would rule that out of order because you do need to have them separated? And then I think we should have 2. I agree with you. It's cleaner.
I think there's precedent for it in that we did that for the townhouse.
Yeah, I don't know how Ray would respond one way or the other, but since one is a higher, you're basing a lower threshold passage and you're tying it to something that takes, 66% or whatever the number is for 2/3. So I don't know. I think separating them is the smart thing to do.
So I guess I have a question for maybe DJ, and that is if the $250,000 passed, but that the bond did not, then the project would have the $230,000 of cash on hand in the account, plus the new $250,000. That makes about $280. And what could you do with that? Or that makes about $480. What could you do with that?
What could you do with that? I mean, you could certainly build the utilities, the parking area, and something. Possibly, let's see, so that's 270. You could build the utilities, the parking area, the loop path with open lawn, and the picnic pavilion, as an example, without the restrooms attached, would come to about that 480 mark. So you could do something that would provide you with the beginnings of an open space and the infrastructure in place to come back later and do more.
Yeah, so
That would,
I just don't do
DJ.
the whole number because DJ hasn't been paid completely yet, I'm sure. So some of that's going to come out of that top of that. So just like.
Well, fair enough.
My question, DJ, is doing it as you just said. That would presume we're leaving the trees and related vegetation in place where the playground would be. Is that correct?
That
the playground
would,
never included
yes.
taking that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd follow through and do that tree clearing for that front area. That's only about 12,000 more. I think we could find ways to make it fit within a budget if you weren't trying to put in play equipment yet.
It seems like we're dismantling the project. The whole purpose of this is to have a playground, not to have a walk.
That's what I was going to say. Is you'd be putting in the.
I agree.
We're getting lost on this.
So the utilities and related connections and logistics for doing that and everything else seem to come to about 140,000 of the 272. Having taken all of my line items and added up just the ones related to utilities. Just to finish answering Justin's question from earlier.
Would it make sense to order these so that the bond one was first?
No, because we got to get something done here, because if all of a sudden the bond one doesn't go, now all of a sudden the super park is dead. Maybe
if this one's easier, it could help make the bond one go. If this one went first and it passed, then that's more momentum for the bond one.
that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. But we've got to move this forward. We've got to move this forward. Is anyone else here on this call? I mean, I was there. I helped build the very first one. That's how old I am. And I was there when it got torn down. And I remember the promises that were made that it'll be built again. And I just, this has got to be done. It's just got to be done.
I agree.
Does everyone think that we've had enough information to make up our minds and make a decision as far as, is this a priority to move forward? Are we at that point?
The only thing I need is the warrant article language as we'll be voting on it. Whether it be
all right, I'd like to make a motion that we have two articles. The first article being for $250,000 from the available funds to be used toward phase one of the super park. And then secondly, that the bond language be done for the rest of the ask for phase one of the super park.
Second.
I would like the very specific language that we'll be doing because I only have one warrant article language in front of me and it doesn't mention a bond. Of course, you're saying two bonds. I want to know what I'm exactly voting on.
Well, we don't have the language in front of you right now for the bond language, if you will. Well, again, what the importance here is to move something forward tonight, and then the language can be clarified in the April meeting. This is for a placeholder.
Yeah.
And we're not, one
Yes.
way or another,
we
we're not going to
need
have
the
the
language
language, the bond language anyway tonight.
To vote on a language is what we need to have in place for, for our deadline tomorrow. We can fill in the details on the dollars, but we need the language. And
The
I'm
bond
not
language is-
comfortable pushing anything forward without language.
The bond language for CPA articles is boilerplate. We're just going to copy it.
Yep.
And
I'd
so
like the specific,
parameters-
I still,
parameters are the principal amount, and the number of years, and the purpose of it.
So, Justin, the warrant article that you see that you should have printed out or that's on your screen, do you have?
yes.
Okay, that will be for the 250,000. The
Okay, so
bond
see if
would
the
be
town will vote to appropriate the sum of $250,000
$250,000.
from which account?
Fiscal 2021 revenue.
For the creation of an inclusive playground and park located at 4 and 6 Upton Street, with such funds to be expensed by June 30th, Joanne, 2022, or to take any other action relative thereto.
Right, so that's the first one. We're not voting, we're just discussing.
And I
The
would
second-
suggest that we cite the for the purposes of doing phase 1 of that project.
For the purposes.
So you wanted to read, for the purpose of completing phase 1 of the creation of an inclusive, or the money's for phase 1 of the creation of?
The creation language now is redundant.
So instead of saying creation, you remove for the creation to replace it with for the purpose of completing phase 1 of an inclusion playground and park,
Do we have a title for this project?
super park.
And this is lacking the June 30th designation, as I
So she just
briefly alluded to there.
plug that in, yep.
Yep. Just calling it out.
Purpose of creating phase 1 of,
An inclusive
Done.
playground, so you're just
inclusive,
playground. So then you fall back into the text that's already there, the language that's there.
I'm sorry, can I jump in, Jen?
Yes.
Jen Thomas here. I think what Kristen, I don't know if this is where you're getting at, but it's not just the playground, it's a park. So, and even in the phase 1, there are other components. So I don't know if we want to just title it Super Park or if we want to do it. Kristen, didn't you have a different title? Didn't you have a different title?
Well, we haven't branded it yet. We haven't come up with that yet. But usually on the site plans that the landscape architect is preparing, whatever this project is, I assume there's like a title, because we're talking about all these phases have different components that we haven't necessarily decided on. So I just get a little bit hesitant to calling out specific pieces of it that we don't know whether or not we're going to go with yet. So
how about, Jen Anderson wrote in an inclusive playground and park. She put that in the chat. Does that work? Purpose of creating phase 1 of an inclusive playground and park?
I think
That's
So
what
this
is currently in there right now, but they were talking about the title itself. CPC-Super Park is what is
Right.
there right now is for the warrant title.
So this is Sandy,
Oh.
just to let you know, the site plan said Super Park. The site plan we reviewed tonight said Super Park. So
okay.
if we looked at that site plan, that includes everything that's been discussed to this point. So I would just use what's on the site plan as submitted. And if you brand it something differently later on, then that's a different issue.
Right. I agree.
Okay, so we're gonna still, warrant article is still called Super Park. The language for the motion for the $250,000 is replace the words for the creation and replace that with for the purpose of creating phase 1.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the motion that I don't even know who made. Jim?
Jim made the motion for both this and to do the bond warrant article, which I
Okay,
still.
so but we're going to do them one at a time, Jim, okay?
Sure.
I
So-
second Jim's motion.
I'm sorry, Paul.
I second Jim's motion.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second by Paul, motion by Jim for the Super Park for $250,000 for the purpose of creating phase 1 of an inclusive playground and park. Any further discussion? All those in favor? I gotta go. Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Sorry, no.
Paul,
Aye.
Jen Thomas.
Aye.
I declare the motion carried. So there
No,
will be,
John, I'm assuming you voted aye.
all of these are ayes for me. I didn't know that
Okay.
I voted unless there's a tie,
Okay.
but every vote today has been an aye for me. I just didn't say it.
Okay.
That's if you're the vice president, John.
Oh, I thought I was.
No, you're the president.
So now there's a second warrant article for Super Park that will say, instead of to see if the town will vote to appropriate, will say to see if the town will vote to borrow. And the dollar amount is $700,000. Everything else would be the same as for the 250. Is everybody clear on the motion?
So to
We
see if the
probably
town
need-
will vote to borrow
Right. That's the only thing that would change.
700,000.
It's 700,000.
So moved.
This is Jen Thomas again. I
Second.
think would say something like, with the authorization of the town treasurer and under the control of the select board. Put something in that for bonding, right?
I think we're just trying to get, I mean, they can clean this up because everything gets cleaned up by the treasurer, the town attorney, but whatever, you're off, Jen. You're muted.
Okay. All right,
I mean-
whatever.
If you think we need to add it, we can add it, but they
No,
always,
no, that's fine.
if we leave out stuff or miss something, they always clean it up.
Okay,
But the intent is to borrow in the
Okay.
appropriate way.
okay, thank you.
Can I just recommend wording for us to go with?
Certainly.
To see if the town will vote to appropriate and borrow, to see if the town will vote to borrow with the authorization of the town treasurer and under the control of the Board of Selectmen. I think Jen's right. I think that's what it needs to be.
Okay.
I'm trying to find stuff from last time. Now, the only thing is, are you good with the 700,000, or Ken, did you want to speak to somebody?
I would still like to get together with it. I'd like to talk to the treasurer and find out what the treasurer thinks the bond would look like.
So then that means we
Even-
don't put a dollar amount in there, right,
Well-
Joanne?
Right, I mean,
I
we
was-
can't, I don't know that we could change it
We
after
can't
we
undo
put it
it.
in there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Are we able to put the dollar amount in there and then vote to change it at our next meeting, even if we have the 700,000 in there?
It's the selectmen, once they
Sign
close
it,
the
we can't.
then we're
Hold on,
done.
John, if I can. The moderator, if the number, this is the typical practice, if you put 700,000 and you ask for 701, he's gonna rule it out of order because you gave notice to the inhabitants that it was 700. If they didn't show up, they were in agreement with it. They didn't have a chance to vote no if you go over that number. So that's why we use a sum of money. So you can use 700 and just stay it there, or we can use a sum of money. And then the motion will have to be specific. Obviously, for borrowing, it has to be. But in terms of holding and giving notice to the inhabitants of the community, that's the purpose of the warrant. So a sum of money suffices. And people who are paying attention and going to finance committee and so forth will see 700,000 or something lower. If my math didn't work for the 85.2 for an annual bond payment for 700,000, it would have to be lower than the 700,000. So I would recommend you go with a sum of money to be appropriate, or not appropriate, and or rate borrowed from under the guidance of the treasurer collector on Article 4, MGL 44.
Tim, would it make sense to add on there not to exceed?
If you just say a sum of money, it's wide open.
Right.
Although we have to live inside the constraints of the money you have for debt service purposes and adhering to your policy to not go over half of your annual appropriation.
It's an informal policy. It's not.
It's a soft policy, very soft. It's soft.
We want to adhere to it and we'll be under that.
How's,
Go ahead.
how's this for language? To see if the town will vote to appropriate and borrow with authorization of town treasurer and under the control of the select board a sum of money to complete phase 1 of the Super Park project.
So moved.
I do have one question regarding the vote we
Wait,
just took.
just a second. We have a
Second.
motion, and do you have a second? I thought you
Second.
moved.
Yeah, the same.
Who made the motion?
Motion.
So Paul made the motion. Jim seconded the motion. So I have a motion and second. Jim, are there any questions or comments? Are there? Justin?
Yep. My question was where Ken's initial thought on that was that if we were to change the amount we're borrowing, we might be adding a little bit to the initial, cash amount we had. Do we then need, since we can't change that 250,000, do we need to amend our vote for the previous warrant article? That's what I'm not sure about, to save sum of money at this point.
Yeah, Justin's got a good point.
Also, we can't on town meeting floor change the numbers anyway per CPA.
I'm aware of that. My point is if Ken is going to be talking to change this borrowing amount.
Yeah, Justin's point is good. It's a good point.
Well, that's why we keep it as a sum of money in all other articles. So it's things change. So I think it's a good idea.
So, following up on what Justin said, I'll make a motion that we alter the.
Wait.
Make a
You have to finish out the one you're on.
We have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded. We're in discussion. Is there any further discussion on this motion for a sum of money to be borrowed using the language that Joanne read, borrowed for phase 1 of the inclusive playground?
Okay.
All those in favor? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Give a
You're-
thumbs up.
you're muted. She said yes.
Is Sandy still on?
I can read lips. You're good.
Gave it-
She said yes?
Love
Okay.
to hear it.
Sorry, my mute button disappeared. Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Nay.
Paul,
Aye.
John, yeah, aye. Jen,
Jen,
Aye.
motion carried. So we're going to revisit the motion that we had previously approved for $250,000 to appropriate.
Do we want to do a new one, or should I withdraw mine?
So we
I
already.
don't know Robert's rules how to do it, but
Can we amend it?
what?
We'll just amend it.
Tim, do you know?
You should vote to rescind the first one and start new.
Okay, so we're going to vote to rescind the original motion to appropriate $250,000 for the inclusive playground and park. Do I have a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
So I have a motion by Jim, a second by Paul. Any discussion? All those in favor? Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
John, I, Jen, Thomas.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, do I have a motion for Super Park to appropriate a sum of money for the creation of an inclusive playground and park?
Do we have to,
I'll motion
comes from?
that,
Um,
I'll motion to see, go ahead.
so did you make the motion?
No, I was asking a point of clarification. Should the
Okay.
include the fund that the funds will come from?
No, we would do, I
No.
think you should do that next month too.
Can figure that out. We've always
You
just,
know, it'll only come from one place. There's only one account that has the money. Enough
Okay.
money to cover it, so it's the revenue.
Okay,
Didn't
fiscal year
Ken already make
21.
the motion?
Wait. Is it fiscal year 21, Ken? Revenue?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
okay, so do I have a motion?
So moved.
Paul made a motion to appropriate 250,000, made a motion to appropriate a sum of money for Super Park, an inclusive playground. Do I have a second?
Second.
Jim made a second. Is there any discussion?
My only discussion is I'm presuming this motion and second is including the language we previously discussed. So the,
Yes.
for the,
Yes.
you know, phase one, yada, yada.
Yeah. Lots of yada yada.
So I do want to point out though, so this motion talks about a sum of money from fiscal year 21 revenue for the creation of phase one of an all-inclusive playground and park.
Correct.
Okay, the other one does not say an all-inclusive playground and park, it says super park, to complete phase one of the super park project.
Basically, I thought I was saying that it's the same language that you had already provided us for the
Yep.
motion.
Yep,
And I didn't say it exactly that way. That's all we're doing is changing appropriate to borrow, plus the extra language of the town accountant and Board of Selectmen, and for the purpose of creating rather than creation.
Okay, I want to stop. Okay, please listen to me on this one. So the motion regarding the borrowing read, to see if the town will vote to appropriate and borrow with authorization of town treasurer and under the control of the select board, a sum of money to complete phase one of the super park project. Now what you're going to do is talk about appropriating a sum of money for creation of phase one of an all-inclusive playground and park.
The purpose of these two should be identical.
Exactly. So I think you need to change, it can't be the exact wording of the first motion that you had that you rescinded.
And that's just because we had a confusion on what it was in it and what was out of it. So
Right.
that's why I got changed to super
Okay.
park. I agree, it should be consistent.
So John, can you read it the way it should be and we'll agree to that?
To appropriate a sum of money from fiscal year 21 revenue to complete phase one
Complete.
of the super park project.
So moved.
Second.
So a motion and a second. Any discussion? There being none. Kristen,
Aye.
Sandy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
No.
Paul,
Aye.
John, I, Jen Thomas,
Aye.
I declare the motion carried. Okay. So warrant articles are all taken care of. The last, hopefully quick piece of business is the community preservation plan update. I'd sent my recommendation along with some information from Roberta, the consultant. And this is to develop, how do we want the plan? A couple of the plans were exceptionally long and very data detailed, which would mean if we do this annually, an update annually ourselves, that'll be quite cumbersome. And maybe a lot of that detail isn't information that we need to include. And so in consultation with Roberta and Joanne, we felt that AIR was a good plan, had adequate information. The only thing that it was lacking was an affordable housing section, which could be easily added in the same format. Something like Holyoke's was a good, had a good section on affordable housing. And then also that Holyoke and Medford both had needs and opportunities section at the end, which is kind of our marching orders. This is what we hope to do. These are things that need to be done. This is what we should look toward supporting in the future. Does anyone have any comments, suggestions, or recommendations on those plans?
I second your good thought out and well-researched opinion.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
I second Jim's comments.
Okay, so a motion and a second that they like my
I will
comment.
comment before you call the vote, just that I'm always a fan of having documents that have lots of data and things like that. I like database, solutions, but I do agree that in terms of updating it frequently, updating the data is going to be very cumbersome for us to do. So I'm happy to move forward with your recommendation.
Okay. But we'll
Good
certainly
thing, because you were going to be in charge of it, Justin.
We're going to certainly have a lot of information in it, but we don't need a 60-page plan, and some of those were quite long. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So, Sandy,
Aye.
I know I'm not going in order. I've lost my page. Kristen,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
John, I, Jen Thomas.
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, is it time to motion to adjourn?
It is time for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Did you make the motion, Jen?
I
I
did.
think I might cry.
I've had a motion and a second by Jen and second by Jim to adjourn.
I'll give you credit for that. That would be.
All those in favor?
You have to do it by roll call.
Oh my God. Kristen,
Aye.
Aye.
Jim, Ken,
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
John, I, Jen.
Aye.
Did I call everybody's name?
No, not me, but
I thought I did. Justin.
yes, we're good to adjourn.
Okay, we are adjourned.